Whoa.
So everything you're going to see is something that my nephew and I made in Minecraft specifically for this video.
This is the coolest thing ever.
Oh, and if you get sick, because I know you have first-person problems, don't look at it. Just look away, because I do not want you to be sick the rest of the video, or the rest of our recording.
I think I should be okay for this.
I specifically tried to walk slow and look.
This is so cute. This is all underwater?
Yes, it is.
Oh my god. Oh my god, there are sharks there. Patrick, this is wild.
Oh, just wait.
You made this whole thing with your
Yes.
nephew?
Yep.
Oh, it's a castle! I love it! What is that thing moving off to the side? I'm instantly afraid.
Oh, there was a horse there.
Oh, there's a horse. I thought it was one of those like things that attacks you. Alohomora.
Get ready for puns.
There's so many little horsies. I'm such a little kid right now. Alohomora. I thought those were horses. I'm very stupid.
There's a horse on the other side.
Yeah. They're so cute though. I gotta say, Minecraft is so amazing. I've never been able to get into it, but like seeing other people create all these really like incredible things. You saved him.
Is it alive?
It's alive and you saved him. Congratulations.
He'll be bacon next week.
No. Hello, Horsa.
I couldn't think of any pun with the horse.
The path of Alohomora? Are we taking another train ride?
Mm-hmm.
This is so cool! This is so amazing! Aloha Aquarium. That is so cheesy. It looks really cool, though. I can't believe you made this.
Yeah, I mean, we spent
I can't believe you made all of this.
Yeah, I would say we spent probably like 4 or 5 sessions of like 2 or 3 hours each on it.
My god.
But it was fun. It was fun to have something specific to build in Minecraft. This turtle right here, he's cool. He never moves.
He's the coolest dude there.
He's just a
He
chill
knows what's
turtle.
what. And a bunch of spinning fishies, and I appreciate this.
They
okay?
really they get attracted to the light, which is kind of a bummer. I didn't realize they were going to do that, but hey, whatever.
They're really cute.
Yeah.
All right, now we're adventuring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Spelunking.
We're heading. Indeed, we are Hogwarts spelunking.
Mm-hmm.
Is there lava in Hogwarts? I had not been aware.
Mm.
That's lava, right?
Yes.
Alohomora restaurant? You made so many things! You made some definite improvements, I would say, on the... Is this the Alohomora castle, would you say?
But yes, it's not Hogwarts.
Okay.
It's just, yeah.
I think I'd like to chill here, honestly. Did he just... just throw it at you?
Yep.
Who is this man that you have captured?
Someone that works at the restaurant.
I like your choice of fancy music, too. This is very fun. I want to chill here and eat some watermelon. Butterbeer and pumpkin juice! Yay! Who is this person?
Working there?
Other people working? No, the people on the wall, the pictures.
Those are just generic Minecraft pictures. There's only
Okay.
like 15 different pictures. It depends on the size. So that's
What are these
no
drippy
relevance.
things? What was that we just passed through?
Just a cool thing, lighting. I don't know.
Sir Goldomora.
Goldhamora.
Goldomora, thank you.
Yes.
I can read, I promise.
No, trust me, I spent a long time on these names, so I know how to pronounce them.
Sir Alohomora. I want these outfits. These are fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a little Alohomora museum.
Mm-hmm.
This is so cool. I can't believe that you made this. It's like a little Alohomora.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The Aloha Monument. What has he created? What have they created? Whoa! Oh my god! Look at all that! Oh, that is so cute! I love it! Is your character currently flying? Is that how we're seeing this right now?
Yes. Yep.
That's wild. So you could just like go here. Is that you?
Mm-hmm.
Nice blue hair. I commend you. Well done.
There's the
Is that your
restaurant
nephew?
worker. Yes.
Is that your nephew? I'm very much enjoying him and his boots. It's very cool. This is so cool. This is adorable. See, this is why Minecraft's amazing. I've got faith in the kids in the next generation. They've got all these Minecraft skills.
For sure. We're going to have a ton of awesome architects.
I know. Are you just going to like float up and just into the great beyond?
Yep.
I don't know how your character is doing that, but that's wild. That is so cool.
Yes, I have to thank my nephew Hunter for doing that. If folks who are really familiar with Alohomora may remember him from making a slight cameo at the intro of Grace and Allison's Getting to Know You.
I remember Hunter.
If you'd like to hear him, you can go and check that out, and you can also stay until the very end of this video because there's going to be an awesome blooper for something really special and funny that my nephew made in that world that you guys just saw. So
that incredible little structure. The whole thing. That's so cool. And this is why video games are important.
Exactly. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Beyond the Books. The second one, I think. I don't know if anyone else has ever done one, but maybe it's just me and Grace's new series where we become better friends in front of your guys' faces.
We're in live in action becoming better friends in front of you. You don't get this kind of entertainment anywhere else.
And the first step to becoming a better friend is to pour your Mountain Dew into your glass of blue, hold on, I gotta wipe this off a little, blue Kool-Aid ice. And guess what kind of Mountain Dew we have today, Grace? This is brand new, possibly world premiere for most people watching this. This is Mountain Dew Major Melon.
Well, I mean, this makes sense because we were just having the watermelon over in Minecraft world.
You know what you're thinking.
I made the connection.
Totally didn't plan that at all because we made that video months ago and this was just made recently. So here we go, everybody.
That means it was fate, Patrick.
Now, I know I'm not going to be able to fit all this in there. So I'll have to save some for later.
This giant jug of water, you would be able to.
Save some room for later, Augustus. Oh, the awesome tanginess of Mountain Dew mixed together with the awesome whatever flavor.
You're making me want soda right now.
So the next thing I have to do is issue a formal apology to you, Grace.
To me?
Because I made possibly the worst mistake of my life while we were recording the anime video. I forgot that I had the most 100% proof, 100% best, greatest, most wonderfulest t-shirt in the world to wear for that. And I forgot that I owned it. And so as to make up for that, I have to show you what it is right now. Okay? So everybody, let's go back in time. Back in time to the anime video and
the mindset.
Pretend that I was wearing this shirt.
Is that Kiki's?
Kiki and Harry Potter meeting on brooms.
Oh my god, is that Harry?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I can't
They're
get it.
Adorable.
I can't get it closer because the light, but you can see back here. I'll zoom in on it.
That is so cute. And actually, like, I feel like it works so well with Little Witch Academia, too.
Yeah, for sure. But this
Little Witch Academia is so good.
100% though, this is Kiki. That is Kiki.
Oh, yeah.
And Harry's on the other side of him and they're meeting. And are they kissing? I don't know.
You don't
I
know.
ship that. I ship Kiki and Harry Potter.
We can do that. You know what?
Even though Ginny's perfect for Harry.
Ginny is perfect for Harry. Harry has two hands. Polyamory can solve many of these stupid love triangles. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. In any case,
I'm just very tired of love triangles. That's all I'm saying.
I hope you will forgive me. Well, after Ginny dies in a horrible Quidditch accident, Kiki can marry Harry then.
Please don't kill Ginny.
It wasn't my fault. Anyway, okay, so now we can start the show proper. Now that I've got those two things out of the way. So everybody, in case you haven't figured it out by now, which how could you, because we've talked about 40 different things, we're going to be talking about video games today. Mm-hmm. We're going to be having a fun time, and basically what we were going to do is we're going to go through and talk about different video games we like and sort of our history with video games, and talk about video games kind of overall as well. But in order to keep things sort of reined in a smidge, because who knows, we're going to be shooting off in the stratosphere, I'm sure, on tangents and everything as we go.
We'll be in the weeds pretty soon. I'm certain.
In order to try to rein me in a little bit.
And me too.
Yeah, but
me.
I know, but I'll just talk forever. But anyway, we've picked 5 games that we really want to talk about. So a bulk of this video is going to be focused on that. But we also are going to talk about other things as well, and different topics as they come up. So, one of the things I wanted to mention right off the bat is I wanted to mention to you, Grace, because you don't know, I wanted to tell you my list of top 5 favorite video games of all time.
Okay.
So some of these we're going to be talking about, and some of them we're actually not going to be talking about, which is interesting because I chose not to include all of my top 5 favorite video games of all time in our 5 to talk about in this video. But my number 1 favorite video game of all time, one that I will be talking about later, is this game right here, Red Dead Redemption 2. My all-time number 1 favorite video game. My all-time number 2 favorite video game is The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt. And if you think about those two games, very similar, actually.
They are.
Very different setting, and sort of a different approach to how open world works.
And we'll talk about this later, but some very, very solid orchestral soundtracks are
for sure
really good.
For sure. And then my number 3 video game is Shadow of the Colossus. And I'm one of the not the few, because a lot of people did play it back in the day, but I played it originally when it came out on PS2. I played it again on PS3. I played it again on PS4. I played it multiple times. I love that game. I think it's beautiful. That is one of the ones I'm not going to be talking about unless we decide to talk about it later, or I have it in my Shoutouts section, but wanted to just mention that. And then my number 4 favorite game of all time is Red Dead Redemption 1. It's sometimes I flip Red Dead and Shadow because I think that they're very equally good, and they're just so vastly different. For me, I'm kind of in a lot of ways in my life, I'm a quantity over quality person in certain ways. And like Red Dead Redemption has the quantity in spades over Shadow of the Colossus, which is a game you could easily beat in under 10 hours if you knew what you were doing in it. The first time it'd probably take you between 12 and 15. Whereas Red Dead Redemption would take you 80 hours, probably, maybe less than that. But if you want to do everything in the game, probably around 80 hours.
It's a game that you're meant to lose yourself in. Yeah,
it is an immersive open world game.
Yeah.
And whereas Shadow of the Colossus is an open world game,
but it's meant to tell a story.
And it's
they've built a world. Yeah,
and it's not meant to be immersive. There's no environmental storytelling for the most part. And then my 5th favorite game, I don't actually know what that is, which is kind of one of the reasons I want to bring this up, because it's just sort of floats around between all these other games. And the reason I wanted to talk about this at the beginning was for me to say, if we were to talk about movies, and we say, like, what are your favorite movies of all time? I have that list, but it's hard for me to quantify that, because how can you compare, like, one movie that you like a lot to, like, the 8 great Harry Potter movies, you know? So you can kind of cheat and say, like, Harry Potter, the series, is, like, my favorite thing as a whole, but that's totally cheating and half-assing a list, and I hate doing that.
Like how I did this list of games that we did?
No, but because all my games all the things I'm going to talk about are series, and that's kind of what I was getting at.
We're all cheating.
That's what I was getting at, though.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily going to be here to talk about our favorite individual games. I'm here to talk about my favorite series, because spoiler alert, all the games I want to talk about are games in a series. And it's just like, I think I love reading book series as opposed to individual books, because you can really, like you said, get lost in the world. There's multiple installments of it. It gets better over time, and that's very clear with video games. You know, unlike a book, whereas an author might, you know, can stay the same consistency throughout the whole way in terms of talent or writing skill. Like, video games are the most easy medium to like see the progression of technology advancing, storytelling advancing, and all sorts of things like that. So, but yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up and say, like, we're going to be talking about series a lot. One other thing I want to bring up right here at the beginning to let everybody know, and we haven't really talked about this too much, so you and I can kind of figure this out now, Grace, but what are we going to do in terms of spoilers? Because the way I was kind of thinking of it, and see if you agree with this, the way I was thinking of it was, if we're going to, like, for example, one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about was The Last of Us, but The Last of Us 2 just came out last year. Yeah. And so since it's such a fresh game, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that haven't played it yet, I know there's a lot of people that did play it, I'm not going to talk about that game in terms of my being one of my 5 to talk about, because I want to respect the fact that that's much newer. Now, that being said, Red Dead Redemption 2 came out in 2018, so only a few years ago, and I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this that have never played that. But I think the way I wanted to try to approach it would be, if I'm talking about something that, and this was kind of actually goes to the overall video, like, are we going to record the video more talking to each other, Grace, or more thinking of the audience the entire time? I think it'll be kind of like a combination of both, because I'm here to talk to you, but also to like say cool stuff to the audience as well. So like, it's going to be a combination of everything. But I think the way I was thinking of spoilers was going to be, if I'm talking about something that really matters to the integrity of the story of the game I'm talking about, I for sure won't spoil it in any case. If we're talking about a game that I don't think you'll ever play, but I feel like the story and the thing that makes it special is like pertinent to what we're talking about, I may spoil a few things in like a storyline or something like that. But what I was planning on doing is, when I'm editing the video, if we're going to be talking about spoilers at all in this video, either Grace or I will announce it beforehand, and then on the screen, clearly, I will have labeled like spoilers for this video game, specific game. Because if I'm talking about, for example, Red Dead 1 or Red Dead 2, and I'm going to spoil something from Red Dead 1, I'll have like listed on the screen, like I'll put a color or something up and be like, we're talking about spoilers for Red Dead 1 now. And then that will go away when we're done with the spoilers. So
that's actually really cool.
Yeah, there will be clear visual markers throughout the video when we'll say it beforehand. And then I will have clear visual markers in case you care about that video game a lot. You can just skip ahead on YouTube to when the color, when that word or those words go away from the screen, then you know we're done with those spoilers.
I think that's a great idea. That sounds fantastic. Also, I don't know if we really have to worry about the games that I have listed too much. They're like 15 to 20 years old sometimes. So I think that talking about spoilers for like Legend of Dragoon, Final Fantasy 7, 8, or 9, or even 10.
7 just came out last year, the remaster. And I know it's a different story.
They might have changed a lot of the story elements.
No, they did change a lot of the story, but just be careful. We'll be careful when we come to that kind of stuff. So, I think the next thing we wanted to talk about a little bit, Grace, was just sort of how we got into gaming ourselves. So I've done a lot of talking, so you go and you give your gaming history first.
I will. Give me one moment. What I'm going to do is I have my documents up on my screen here. I'd rather have them down here so I don't have to mess around with
100%.
With clicking anything. So, I mean, my start with video games, I think, is a little bit strange. When it comes to video games, especially like when I was growing up, a lot of people didn't really include girls in a lot of that, which sounds really strange, especially now, because I feel like girls are half of the community, if not more, like the gaming community.
Can I ask, would you be uncomfortable giving a sort of a time frame in terms of like what years you're talking about?
Oh yeah, God, what the first
like how old are you? Is that something you're comfortable saying?
Yeah, I was like 9 or 10?
Okay.
9 or 10 when I really started up. 11 was when I got really, really into video games. And that was when I got I got really obsessed with a lot of different escapism. That was the year that my father passed away, and my cousin had lent us an N64. And for that, the entirety of that year, all I was doing was playing Zelda Ocarina of Time just over and over and over again.
So that,
and it was like,
is that a N64 or is that GameCube?
N64.
N64, okay.
Ocarina of Time is N64. GameCube was the start of Wind Waker. So, and then there was Twilight Princess a little later after that. And I played both of those too. But like that was my first real experience with like a really immersive video game.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I think I took a bit of a healthier obsession with it. If you can have a healthy obsession with anything. But I really loved exploring different video games. And that was when I saved up to buy my first ever console. And that was a PS1 way back in the day.
Awesome.
And I bought it for $40 off of a friend of mine in math class.
Ooh,
it was very fun.
That's a good deal.
I know, right?
That's a good deal.
But that was when I played a lot of my JRPGs, and I really became
That's
invested.
what that system is known for, JRPGs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they're incredible. To this day, I still go back to how good they are. But it was when that was when I started really becoming invested in how characters are developed through interactions with them and like the little tiny details that you find in them. So that was when when storytelling became really important in my life. And I realized that books were a perfect medium for storytelling, but video games were an incredible medium for them because you were so involved within the story already. You already had a hand in what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to work. Like you had to become very much invested in the next steps of that story.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was the Final Fantasies and like I'll mention all these later, but like Legend of Dragoon, that was when I found all of those. And from there on out, I just started playing a lot of different games, but I never quite got into like the sort of first-person shooter aspect of games, more so because of my own motion sickness and my inability to really get the controls down.
Yep. And
but,
that's something that's something I think we should point out too. That's a good thing to point out at the beginning of the video too. You and I both have that problem, and I think maybe you to a slightly worse degree than I do. However, I also have pretty severe motion sickness from first-person games, and it's really interesting because I can watch first-person movies, the like Cloverfield and Dot Rec and Blair Witch, things like that. I can watch that and I'm fine, and I've actually watched a fair amount of footage of video games that are first-person. Like I'm a fan of Achievement Hunter and Rooster Teeth and things like that. And a lot of those guys put out all sorts of first-person videos, and I can watch that. I can't watch it for too long, like after an hour or so. Like if they release something that's an hour and a half or 2 hours, I can't get through that whole thing. But I can watch it and I'm okay. And something like Minecraft, I'm always okay. Minecraft has never made me sick, even playing it. However,
interesting.
Yeah, and that is very weird. But I think that's more because it's so lo-fi. Like there's long draw distance, like you can see very far into the distance, but I've never been able to play a first person shooter. I never have ever played a first person shooter, and I think that's the same with you.
I think it's also like it's an overstimulation. Cause I can't play Overwatch. I've tried playing Overwatch. It is way too much. And like the thing is, I actually really like the character designs for Overwatch, and I like the story that they used to be building for Overwatch. We'll see if that continues. It's fine. I won't go too much into it. It's not even on my list, but that's a first person shooter that I wish that I could play with friends, but I just really can't get. Yeah.
See, for me, I don't think it has any, for me personally, it doesn't have anything to do with sensory overload. It's purely the motion of the camera. Like it's motion blur. Like I turn motion blur off on any game that has the option, which most games do, but I turn motion blur off on everything, and then that really helps. Because when I started playing Uncharted 4, for the first 2 or 3 hours, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can even finish this, which Uncharted is a third-person action-adventure game, which is my jam. That's basically every game I've ever played and enjoyed is a third-person action-adventure game. And it wasn't until I turned the motion blur off that I was 100% fine with that game. But
nice.
Yeah, for me, it's the motion of the camera. Okay, but anyway, I'm sorry. We just went on a big derailing thing. Continue with your history of games.
That's basically the whole history is that I basically have mostly gotten into JRPGs and like you, third person action adventure because I don't really do first person. And even then, the subject matter typically of the ones that are marketed towards an American audience or an English speaking audience, which is what I would be doing, they're usually marketed towards a completely separate audience than what I would be interested in. So mostly what I'm going for are like the lower budget RPG type games, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a lot of fun to see what indie developers are coming out with more recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a few of them on like my honorable mentions. A lot of my main games are ones from way long ago, which I still think like I still go back to kind of check on. So, yeah, I mean, that's basically my history with games. I have a lot of really fond memories of like playing Final Fantasy VII with my sister, which like I think everyone's got some rose-tinted glasses when they look at a game like that. So we'll get into that when I do the Final Fantasy stuff later. But like I've played a lot of games with like my cousins and my sister, and it's a lot of fond memories and a lot of really, really good escapism. So.
Sure. Okay, well, for me then, I got into games when I was very little. I don't remember exactly when this happened, but my dad, who it's funny because if anybody knew my dad, this next sentence I'm going to say is ridiculous. But my dad bought an Intellivision when I was very little, like probably 3 or 4. And I'm not sure if you're familiar what the Intellivision is, Grace. It was right around the same.
I have no idea.
It was around the same time as Atari. So
wow,
very early 90s. I was born in '86, and I think I started getting into gaming when I was 4 or 5. So I would say early 90s, like 91, 92. So my dad bought at a garage sale a box with an Atari and a few things in it. And I can remember being very little and sitting in the kitchen while my mom was cooking lunch or something and playing Pitfall and Asteroids and things like that. And so like I'm talking like
cute.
Old arcade games. Yeah. And I still have all that stuff. And when we started thinking about this video, I was like, oh, I got to get out all my old retro stuff. And I just like totally scrapped all that. I was like, I'm not going to do any retro stuff. I'll talk about it a little bit now and when we're doing my history with games, but I'm not going to show anything because I was going to bring all sorts of like cool box art to show you, Grace, that you would love. And I have all sorts of like cool old stuff. And just to give you a little bit of one of the things that was cool about the Intellivision was the Atari. I'm sure you've seen. It's like a little thing you hold in your hand and it's got the joystick. And that's kind of how you play the Atari. The Intellivision was a totally different concept. It was a box like any of the consoles, and then there were 2 slots in it, and you pulled out the slot, and it was basically what looked like a phone. It was a square. Let's see if I have anything around here. I should have just brought one of the controllers to show you. But basically, think of like a square about the size of my hand, and on the top part, there was just what would essentially be the D-pad now, just a circle that you could use your thumb and go all the way around it, up and down. And so that's how you controlled a lot of stuff. But then there was a dial pad that would be on like a phone. So it was the numbers 1 through 10 and then like a pound and all that stuff. So it looked basically just like an old phone with buttons. Yeah. And then what happened was for every game, it came with a card that had like a little plastic cutout, and you laid that over it, and then every button became whatever it said on that card that you laid over it as like a template. And so for like Pitfall, there would be like the D-pad, and then you put that over the D-pad and it slipped over it. And then there was like the jump button, the whatever button, this. And it just said what the buttons were right on there. So every game could have up to like 10 or more controls, just buttons on the
That's
on the
really intelligent for like a really early game system.
It was a really cool and very innovative way to do it, but it didn't really work the best. But none of that stuff worked great compared to obviously what we're doing now. But so I remember playing Intellivision a lot when I was young. And then when I would say probably, I'd have to look at the dates of when stuff came out, and I'm not good with dates and stuff. But when I was probably 6 or 7, I got my first console, which I have right here. I got my Sega Genesis.
Very nice.
And
good choice.
From that moment on, I was a Sega guy for the Sega and Nintendo
for the
era.
war, the Great War, if you will.
Now, I also did have my Super Nintendo. I also had my Super Nintendo, but this I got much later. As you can see, this is one of the like later editions that was much cheaper. And I got this, and the only games I ever had for this were the only true Nintendo game that I loved was Donkey Kong Country 3. And I did play through Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 at one of my friends' houses. But basically, I had one friend that in elementary school. He was my best friend all growing up, and he and I both liked video games, and we both loved wrestling. And so I would go to his house to play the games he had, and I would have different games on purpose so that he could come to my house and we could play those. And so that was how my gaming basically started, was playing with him, doing things like that. I have a ton of Sega Genesis games. There's a bunch of like special ones, whatever. I'm not going to go too much into like individual games and stuff. And then when the PS1 came out, I did manage to get one of those. And since then, I've just been a PlayStation guy. Not because I have no ill will towards Xbox or Nintendo. I just, when I got my PS1, I loved all the games that were on it. And then the series just continued on PlayStation.
They did, yeah.
And so I've had PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4. Eventually, probably next year, sometime, maybe the year after, I'll get a PS5.
Yeah, but, I mean, like, honestly, it's also a question of money. Like, you really cannot afford all of the systems. It would be wild. It's just wild.
And if you're the kind of person that can, like, that's awesome. Like, I have no
good
ill
for
will
you.
towards you.
Yeah, fantastic.
There are some Xbox games that, like, I've wished I've been able to play over the years.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I've been very, very happy with my PlayStation, like, I don't want to say allegiance because I don't, but I am just a PlayStation guy basically.
Yeah.
But PlayStation makes the type of games that I like to play. Like every single every single one of PlayStation's first party titles. Just even if you look at the PS4, like Last of Us, Uncharted, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, God of War. All those games are third-person action-adventure games, and that's
and they've
what
been
I
so
play.
good at like they have these games that are I think almost specifically marketed to an American audience, and then you have the ones that are specifically marketed towards a Japanese audience, and they actually eventually end up coming over here. So if I have like the PlayStation systems, I've got a PS3 downstairs, and I'm about to play through Eternal Sonata, which is like it's an older game, but yet again, it's another example of them importing games that were meant for a Japanese audience over to here, and that's kind of like my flavor of game.
That's awesome.
So,
that's so different from me. Like any game that has turn-based combat, get out of here. I cannot
Send it
do
my
that.
way. Send it my way.
I'll send it to you if I get one accidentally, because it would be an accident. So yeah, I've always just been a PlayStation guy, and I haven't really. This is one of the things I was afraid to get into, but we can get into it now, I guess. So being a PlayStation guy and never being a Nintendo guy means I have never in my life played a second of any Zelda game.
Oh, no.
Ever. I've never played a second of any Zelda game. I have played some Mario stuff. I did have my Super Nintendo, and I did have something on there that was. I never had an original NES, just the Super Nintendo. But I did have a Game Boy Advance that we got when whenever that came out. And so I have on my Game Boy Advance, I did play all the way through several times. I played all the way through Super Mario World 3, I think, which is the one where he has the cape and then also that's the one with the cape. The raccoon
tail, right?
The raccoon tail, but then also the cape. And that Mario game is fantastic, and I'm assuming that's the quality. But like, I've never played Mario 64, never played Galaxy, never played Paper Mario, never played any of these other games that people hold to such super high regard. Never played any of those. Never played any of the Zelda games. Never played Metroid, which I was first person now. Never played any of that kind of stuff. So for me in gaming, like I kind of feel like I haven't experienced like a large chunk of what got most people into gaming in the first place.
So what I'm hearing right now is that you have all of the games that like I don't really play, and I have all the games that you
is 100%. It's which is kind of making me wonder.
This is gonna be good then.
What we're gonna if you're gonna care at all about what I talk about.
Actually, no. I'm looking forward to hearing it because I never got into the Witcher games nor the Red Dead Redemption ones, and I really want to hear your opinion on them now.
For me personally, I've always felt like, because I usually only ever play like these giant tentpole games, like I play the games that people like look forward to every year, like the Assassin's Creeds and all the big first party Sony games, like the games that have marketing and push behind them. I very rarely ever like fall in love with an indie game or something that's like a lower budget thing. And I think the biggest reason for that is just like I don't have a ton of money, and so like when I buy a video game for $60, I want to be able to play that game for months and months and months. And the kind of games that allow me to do that are these giant open world games. And so, and we'll get more into that stuff later, but
So I will be able to introduce you to a ton of crazy weird games that I have listed.
Before I finish my little section here on how I got into gaming, I found a few cool like old retro things that I wanted to just point out and show. So I was talking about our Intellivision. This is I should have put the lights farther away. Hold on. This is
Beauty and the Beast?
Beauty and the Beast. And this is just the book for it. And I was going to just show you like a picture of, just because I think you'd get a kick out of some of this.
Oh my god! So it's like a King Kong kind of thing.
It's 100%. Here's
That's
exactly
wild.
Here's exactly what the level looks like. Hold on, let me find a picture of the level.
Oh, so okay, and it's like Wreck-It Ralph almost.
Yes,
they had to have taken some inspiration from this.
So this is from our Intellivision. This is 1982 is when this came out. I didn't get it new. Obviously, this is in the news. But
that's so cool.
What's cool about these? I just have like a few little documents here to show, and then two magazines from when I was little. But I found a sack. I have in my room. I have in my closet. I have two big tubs full of. One of them had my PS2, which is sitting over here, and it had all my PS2 games in there plus my PS1 games. And then I had a few like a notebook with full. And I was going to bring that too and show you because cheat codes used to be the world to me.
They were the thing.
Yes.
I remember using cheat codes and destroying one of my games with it.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, and you could buy a Game Shark and
I had one.
Oh,
I had a Game Shark.
That's awesome. And I would go to the store and buy like cheat code magazines and things, tips and tricks and things like that. But anyway, so I had a big folder full of all that kind of stuff in one of these tubs. And I pulled it out and I was looking through it and I just was amazed at some of the stuff that I found. So I was just going to show you. So this came with my I should have set up a light just to show stuff. I'm going to move this over.
I wouldn't even
here.
worry about it. I can see it when you hold it up.
I know, but you could see that stuff when I had the light there. But so this came with my Sega Genesis. So this is Batman on the front, and then so this I think was from 1992. That's what this is.
Oh
from.
my god! Hey!
Sonic 2, which is the one that introduced Tails.
That's so fun.
I was a Sonic fan, but now when I go back and try to play those games, oh my gosh, they're terrible. So fast. Let's see. I just got some stuff that was different. To show.
I've got a few friends who still love playing those old Sonic games. They're so much fun.
This is just an old. Actually, I don't even know why I brought that one. I don't care about that one. This one I think is. This was the Sega Genesis game, 1994, I think, maybe 1993, for Jurassic Park. Sega.
Oh, fun!
Yeah. And all of these are all, they all have like advertisements for old games on them and stuff, which I'm not going to waste the time trying to let you see all that stuff because it's hard to see. But then I brought a couple of examples of magazines for younger kids who might not remember, like, now you can get everything on the internet, obviously. But when I was young and even into like high school, like you didn't use the internet for information the way we do now. And so magazines for gaming was like the biggest thing. And so this is a GamePro magazine. GamePro is like the biggest magazine for games, I would say.
GamePro Game Informer was a big one too. Is that the same one? Or am I crazy?
Might have bought one of them.
I feel like only one is around now.
Here's the original Final Fantasy VII. Here's an advertisement to go buy it at Target.
Wow.
That's why these magazines are so cool.
That's wild.
There's a couple of.
We're gonna talk about Final Fantasy VII. That's gonna be fun.
Hold on. There's a reason I brought this. Just because the advertisements are so crazy in here, for different things. Here's for the PlayStation 1 and Tarzan.
That's wild. That's
Tarzan
pretty funny.
The game. Oh, here we go. In the back here, we have
these are cheat codes.
These are the cheat codes. Yes, and this is for WWE, which is why I bought this one. So this is telling us on this page Mark Henry's move set and Jeff Jarrett's move set. And then I also
back when.
This is volume 3 of PlayStation Magazine. And I think like here's a big advertisement for Baldur's Gate, which is a very famous.
Oh my God, Baldur's Gate!
Yeah, very, very famous.
I loved playing Baldur's Gate. I did not play nearly enough of it, but me and my sister used to love it.
Here, this is an advertisement for GTA 2. This is before GTA was open world game. Well, it was open world, but it was top down. So this is the kind of stuff that
GTA had quite the reputation.
One of my old tips and tricks, and this one was a magazine that was just full. You can see how much I've used this over the years. It's totally fallen apart.
Actually, I don't have any of my old gaming magazines, but I used to love the guides to it, and I'll get into them when we get into the certain games, because there were guides that I literally used to just read through for funsies, which is a whole nother thing.
Well, and then there was, the guides, the Prima official strategy guides.
Loved the Prima guides,
just big, basically like sort of like art books that...
Exactly, that's what I'm getting at. It's like, I loved the artwork. I used to just go through and just pick apart details on the artwork.
And they still make those for some games. Like, I know I was tempted to buy the Witcher 3 one, but I had already beaten the game, so I was like, I don't want to waste my money on that. But
the artwork.
The artwork, though, for sure.
So good.
Oh, I just remembered a thing. Holy cow.
What?
I forgot the most important part of my setup, Grace. I was going to do this as like a big deal. Okay, everybody, get ready. 3, 2, 1. Boom! Ha ha! Oh, hey! I can't believe I forgot about that.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm so dumb for not forgetting that. Anyway, there we go. Big reveal of my cool lights that outline the shelf. Sweet, I'm so great.
I'm going to have to take a picture of the lights that we have on all the figures that are in our downstairs.
You should. But just to finish my wrestling thing, to go into like how important wrestling has been to me, it would be impossible. But one of the reasons that wrestling was and continues to this day to be so important to me is how the video games influenced me growing up. Like wrestling video games were like the thing that I did for like a majority of my free time, all probably up in like through high school. Because when I was fun. Yeah, they were fun. They're basically just fighting games. But
I love fighting games.
The aspect of them that really enticed me when I was younger was the creation aspect of it. I have like a roster of like 20 to 30 guys that I created myself with my friend who also liked wrestling. And like we would have these guys, they had names, they had finishers, they had everything, they had songs, entrance themes, they had everything. And every game that would come out that had a creation suite in it, which they call them CAWs in the WWE for create a wrestler in the wrestling world. But any game that had like the CAW creation system, I would just spend like, hours. Innumerable hours.
Hours and hours, yeah,
making
absolutely.
All these different guys and like upgrading them, and they'd have stories every year with different things, and the amount of time that I spent doing that is insane. And then I would go to school and I would have these notebooks where I just filled them with drawings of the wrestlers and all these like different tournament brackets and things that my friend and I would do, or that I would do myself. And just to point out that I got stuff here on my shelf, I have, let me count here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13... 13 wrestling games right here. Some on the PS1, some on the PS2. And then over here somewhere I have some PS3 ones. I have wrestling game on PS4. I had them on Sega. I have a ton on Sega. I have a ton. I've for sure played over 25, 30 wrestling games.
It sounds like you fell in love with those characters the same. Like, I would create characters for like every single universe that I got obsessed with way back when I was a kid. And my sketchbooks were filled with those old drawings. It's a little bit insane. And it's like you really need to oh, absolutely. But that's something that's like really fun to do. I never really too much got into character creation for a lot of the games that I was in, because I really just wanted to get invested in the main character. But at the same time, I used to make characters for other universes all the time. So.
Sure, and you create stuff for D&D now. So.
Oh yeah.
So it still continues. Okay. So now
we can get started though. Let's pick out our favorite games for now. Do you want me to start? Or do you want to start?
I want you to start because I just talked a bunch, and you can talk now for a little while.
We'll swap off for a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first one that I picked, and so we're on my phone. I'm not hiding anything here with my little Slytherin thing. Okay. Is The Legend of Dragoon, and I'm going to bring up just
which I've never even heard of. So
it's a little wild. This one is kind of a deep cut. Let me scroll over to it. It was produced by Sony Entertainment and released in 1999 in Japan and 2001 in the United States. the reviews compared it unfavorably with Final Fantasy, which is probably why it never quite got as much traction as they did.
Sure.
It was also one of my first ever real encounters with JRPGs. So the way the Legend of Dragoon works, and if you look it up, you'll find all the old artwork of it. And you'll also find it being confused a lot with Dragoon Riders or something like that, which is another game that came out at a similar time. This was my first ever encounter with characters that I really became attached to. And I loved the stories, and I loved the adventures that they were going on. You got... and I also have my action figures here. So here's one of the characters.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Can you see her?
Yeah.
This is Shanna.
Okay.
Shanna was like the main girl. Oh wait, she's missing a bit of her armor here. They're very old, mind you. This is why they're falling apart.
Sure.
She's got her little armor bit on top. But she was the basic girl character that the main character ended up falling in love with. I do not have his action figure. This one was my favorite character, Lavitz. He was the Lance character.
Oh, awesome.
And he's got a great little face there if you see it.
Yeah.
Loves to grimace at people.
That's awesome.
And this last
he looks
one
like a Mulan character almost.
Oh, he kind of does. But he was like the knight that just wanted to save everyone. He was very, very, very lawful good if we're going by alignments. This one's Rose. Love the boot choice. Very nice. She was the dark, mysterious one, if you will.
She looks very similar to a character in Dragon Prince on Netflix.
I could believe it. Yeah. I mean, she's got a great design. Actually, the character design in this game was pretty good, but is very predictable, especially for its time. Like, you get the very bright primary characters for your main characters. The basic storyline is like your sort of like Sword and Sorcery Final Fantasy-esque. Like, there's like main empires that are going against you. But what was interesting about the fight system in this one was that you had to like keep your mind very active even during the turn-based system, because you had to be clicking buttons as people were attacking in order to make sure that they did like the max amount of damage. So it was like you had to click it in time with their attacks basically to make sure that they did damage.
So there was like a rhythmic aspect to it as well.
Yeah. It was cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it was definitely different from what I saw from the Final Fantasy series. And I personally loved the story and the pre-rendered backgrounds. And that's kind of something that runs throughout my love of these games. And my fondest memories with all of my JRPGs are with playing them at 2 a.m. with my sister, trying to get past this one boss that we're both just like screaming at, just like, they're doing so much damage.
Now, I will say before you get too far into this, you may have to explain some of the stuff you're saying. I'm like, I kind of understand what you're saying, but I also kind of don't.
Okay.
So like, you may have to go a little bit more into detail. Like,
sure.
Because like, I've never played like a tactic type of RPG.
Like a JRPG.
I've never played one like that. Like, the closest I've ever gotten is actually playing The Witcher, which I know is way different.
No way!
But that's the closest I've ever gotten to a true RPG. I think. Maybe if we talk through something, you'll be like, oh no, that's way more of an RPG. But
so like turn-based, do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yes, I understand how that works. Like, you have systems. Yeah. You have each person. Like, you have a what's the group called? Like your
basic
party.
Like battle group. Your
like
party. But for this game, you have a limited number of items that you can carry with you. I think it was something like 32, so you had to be very frugal about what you were buying.
Okay.
And that I thought was really interesting, because in Final Fantasy, you can literally buy 99 of everything. So you can be covered for a lot of different bases. And you could also choose to like guard and heal yourself, which is pretty much across the board. You can do stuff like that, but they handled it in a different way. But when I talk about pre-rendered backgrounds, it basically means like your character is something that you can move around on the screen and it looks very like pixelated. But the background is almost like a painterly texture to it.
Is that how Final Fantasy VII was?
Yes.
Because I've seen a little bit of footage of that. So
that's how Final Fantasy VII was in a game that I will get to that uses it to like a far greater extent. You can almost see where the background ends and your animation begins.
Okay.
But like these backgrounds were just so lovingly made, and I loved them so much that I got very much into like noticing the kind of artwork that went into these games. And you're
an artist, so that makes sense.
Yeah, it tracks. But I am just a huge fan of that. And the storyline was kind of innovative because it does deviate. A lot of the people who did a lot of the reviews didn't, I think, play through the entirety of the game, understandably, because JRPGs can go on forever.
Right. That's a problem to this day with reviewing video games. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, like, midway through the game, it does deviate a great deal. So whatever similarities it had to Final Fantasy, it goes kind of in another direction at a certain point. And that's what happens with a lot of these games that these, like, sleeper hits that, like, kind of have a cult following now. But back in the day, they were kind of, like, lower rated games.
Mm-hmm. Now, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
This might be almost too difficult to answer, or maybe I'm just stupid. But, like, with games like this, how is the story told? Is it mostly, like, through cutscenes, or, like, here's a question, like, is there actual dialogue in the game, or is it just reading?
Yeah.
Like,
there is some, especially for this is I think one of the oldest games that I have listed. Yeah, it is. This one is the oldest game I've listed. The only dialogue that you will get are a few lines during, like, cinematic cutscenes.
Okay.
All of the rest of the dialogue is written on the screen.
Okay.
So that is part of the reason as to why I think that it kind of activated my imagination. And I'm not going to say, like, kids these days and their cutscenes and their spoken lines. Oh, like, I actually think that that's a really incredible innovation. And I love seeing it in games personally. Okay. But back in the day, I kind of just had to make up how all these characters sounded. And I got so invested in the voices I created for these characters that I, like, loved, like, every sort of interaction that they had.
Okay.
Looking back on it now, the translations aren't the best. And the voice acting was not great in the cutscenes, but at the time the graphics were fantastic.
It's just so interesting to me, not being familiar with any type of those games. Like, whenever I hear people talk about, like, JRPGs, the thing that they talk about the most is the story. Like, the story is, like, the most important thing. The story
is incredible.
And it's so interesting to me to think that, like, the story could have been told so well to you that it, like, sticks with you for the rest of your life just through, like, dialogue trees and stuff. Like, that seems like such a foreign way to intake a story to me.
Yeah. It's almost interesting because they even knew the limitations of their system. And sometimes, like, you'll see during these JRPGs, like, different pop-ups will, like, appear on different parts of the screen depending. Like, I'm going to be talking about Final Fantasy later. Legend of Dragoon does the same thing. Sometimes thoughts will appear in different sections of the screen to show that maybe they're just, like, floating into the character, or that it's something that's just, like, happening in the background. And sometimes, depending on who is talking, different dialogue boxes will open just, like, all over the screen to, like, show how overwhelming this response is that you've done. Cool. So, like, it's interesting to see how things happen. And I like it when a system kind of pushes the art form, even despite, and also sometimes because of its limitations. Mm-hmm. Sure. So, like, that's really cool to see for me.
Sure. So, because I will never play this game,
I don't blame you. It's
do you want to go through the story a little bit and, like, explain why it stuck with you so much?
Sure. I'll explore some of the first disc, which I think is, like, one of the easiest ones to get through. Oh my god,
there's more than one disc?
There's 4 discs.
On a PlayStation 1?
On a PlayStation 1.
Oh my god.
Actually, all of the Final Fantasies that I have to talk about are the same way.
Oh my gosh. I one of the games I'm talking about has 2 discs, and to me that was like, oh, 2 discs?
Yeah.
What?
4 discs for this guy. And each of them had a different arc of the story, which was so good. Each had a different feeling. Like, dude. Disc 1 was very, like, kingdom versus empire, sword and sorcery. Disc 2 was, like, political intrigue in this flowering kingdom. Disc 3 was this winter country that you went through. And Disc 4 was all of the ending worlds to get to the final boss.
Oh, that's so cool.
One of them is the City of Death. And it's so mind-blowingly cool.
Oh,
but
man,
Disc 1, like, you meet Dart. He's coming back from a very long journey that he was in. On his way back to his hometown, he almost gets attacked by, like, what seems like this giant dragon, but he's saved by this passing warrior who's dressed all in black, and she has crazy boots on. It's Rose, the one that I showed you earlier. And he comes back to his town. He sees that it's been burned down. And, like, the opening cutscene, you actually see the attack on the town, and you see Shanna get captured. So Dart's like, I have to go and get Shanna back, and a few different people tell him exactly where to go, so it's justifiable in the story for him to know where it is. Heads over to the prison. He frees Lavitz, the knight that I showed you, who is also captured by the Imperial Sandora, which was the empire that you're like going against, and then they both get Shanna back, and then everyone goes over to meet like the good guy kingdom, the kingdom of Basil, which is like fighting against Imperial Sandora. Now, everything is at face value right now. What you don't know at the time is that Dart went off originally to find the people who had killed his family, the Black Monster. So he's hunting down the Black Monster. Shanna was adopted, and she was apparently like, she's like this child of prophecy.
Is she related to the people he's trying to kill?
No.
Okay. All right.
But
sorry.
it's a whole separate thing.
Okay.
Do you want me to give away all of the
You can give
crazy
away anything you want. Just say if you're going to say... Well, actually, I don't know if people care about spoilers for something that's this old.
For something that's literally 20 plus years old. Spoiler alert for this entire game.
Okay.
Rose is the Black Monster. She has to hunt down Shanna, because Shanna is the child of prophecy that will bring about the end of the world. Shanna was captured by Imperial Sandora, who's trying to bring about who's being controlled by a man who's trying to bring about the end of the world, unknowingly. And the empire of the kingdom of Basil, led by King Albert, his uncle is the head of Imperial Sandora, and he started Imperial Sandora because he killed Albert's father.
Oh my gosh.
Lavitz, who you rescued from the prison, is actually his mentor who taught him how to fight.
Oh my gosh.
There's so many interconnections in this story, and that's just the beginning.
Oh my gosh. This is awesome. It's like it's a
drama.
Not
this is
knowing,
JRPGs.
Yeah, I was going to say, not knowing anything about this, really, like, the people I've heard talk about JRPGs a lot always talk about, like, the depth of the story, like, how much
wild.
there is into it. And, like, the Japanese games that I love are just, like, bonkers, nuts, crazy, you know. Yeah. And so, like, this just sounds like it fits into all that. But, like, the amount in this just sounds like it's got everything, you know? Like, it's awesome.
Wild. That
sounds really cool.
If you are into JRPGs, which I know that you're not, but if anyone listening out there is into like super old style JRPGs where it's just turn-based combat, this is definitely your jam. There are definitely things in the game that get a bit clunky, like you never quite know certain time, like how much damage you're about to do. And I never noticed when I was a kid, but that's definitely something that people have pointed out. And the story, at a certain point, some people complain that it gets predictable. I never saw whatever was happening coming, but I thought it was great. I don't want to go on for too long because I want to see what you have listed first.
So do you know anything about Twisted Metal at all?
Zero.
Oh my God.
Zero.
Yes, this is great. Oh,
this is really good.
The PlayStation gods have given us a gift of ignorance. Mm-hmm. I love it. Hold on, let me... So Twisted Metal is a vehicular combat assault game. Which was a pretty popular genre for a little while on the PS1. And so I have the games here, and I'll show you those. This is the first one.
Ooh. You know what? I think I saw kids playing this when I was a kid.
The mascot for Twisted Metal is one of the main characters, and it's he'll show up in all of these. But his name is Sweet Tooth. He's a clown whose head is basically on fire. This is Twisted Metal 2.
Very nice.
Then we got
well done.
Twisted Metal 3. That's the clown.
Oh, I see. He's making his true appearance here.
Yes.
He's really taking over the title.
Oh,
love him.
Literally, that's hilarious you said that, because he took over the whole Twisted Metal tournament in this game, which is the next one, and he ran it instead of Calypso, which I'll get to in a second. Then we have my favorite game in the series, and I think one of the most daring and amazing games on the PS2 era. This is Twisted Metal Black.
Ooh, wow. Got edgy.
Possibly the darkest video game I've ever played.
Wow.
And then the abomination that is unfortunately possibly ruined Twisted Metal as a IP forever. Although they are currently working on a TV show, because PlayStation now has PlayStation Studios, which is their like movie brand that they're making TV shows and movies out of. They're currently working on the Uncharted movie.
Ooh.
With Tom Holland as young Nathan Drake.
Oh my God!
Yeah, they're filming it, and the photos and stuff they've released actually make it look really cool. And the writers of
There's an
Uncharted
audience
games
for it. There's absolutely an audience for something like that.
And well, we don't need to get into all that. There's a lot more in it. But anyway, one of the other projects that PlayStation Studios has said they've been working on for many years. There was a Twisted Metal movie in the making for years, and then that fell apart. But now they have a Twisted Metal TV show, which is great because when I explain to you what Twisted Metal is, you'll be like, "This is the greatest idea for a TV show ever." But so here's the Twisted Metal. It just called Twisted Metal back on PS3. This game was so disappointing that it basically kind of ruined all future hope for another Twisted Metal game. But
that's so sad.
One of the good things about Twisted Metal, and especially these original 4 games on the PS1, is that there is a lot of nostalgic love for these games. And a lot of people like myself, like this is like one of the defining game series of my childhood for sure. And so a lot of people love Twisted Metal, and even still to this day, like I just got this in Christmas for December. This is the second ever pop vinyl figure I ever got. This is Sweet Tooth with his truck.
That's a really good one too.
Yeah,
honestly,
one of my favorite pops I've ever seen, and only the second
that's
one.
That's
that
a large
I own.
lad over there.
Yeah, it was one of the big expensive ones. But while I'm talking about that, I also have. This is one of. I just looked this up the other day. Just yesterday I looked this up. This is my Sweet Tooth official PlayStation Sweet Tooth action figure.
You've got so many action figures. All I have are the
I don't have
ones.
a lot. I don't have a lot. But this is one of the things. The only other one that they made in this series was Heavenly Sword. And this was when I was working back at Hastings, which is why I still have the tag on here. It's a Hastings tag. This is back when I was still working there, so I was able to order it and get it for it was $17.99. So I got it with my discount, so it's probably $14.99. This on eBay, unboxed right now, is $250. This.
Oh my god!
That I bought for $14 like 10 years ago at Hastings.
That's so cool.
But that also kind of tells you like the rarity of like Twisted Metal and how it's still sought after. And then the other thing I have, which is my most special Twisted Metal thing, I got this when I was working at Hastings as well. When that crappy PS3 game came out, this was our promotional material for it. So this is his actual vehicle with his bobblehead on it.
That's so fun.
This is just made out of cardboard, and this is something we had sitting on our PlayStation display. But this is like one of the most prized things that I have, especially for gaming. Like,
it's really cool.
Yeah, Twisted Metal
especially for something that you love so much.
Yeah, and Twisted Metal is something that, like I said, it has enough love that people kind of know it. They feel nostalgic about it. I don't know a lot of people who are still as in love with it as I am, but so you not knowing what Twisted Metal is at all, it's basically the whole game is just centered around the concept of deathmatch. And so basically there were like every game had between like 10 and 15, and then the later games maybe around 20 different characters, and each character has their own sort of backstory and their own history, and they each have their own car and their own and the cars were just like in the first game, it's just like very generic. Like there's like this the big semi was like the bad guy, and then there's a tank, he's like the main boss at the end. There's a motorcycle, there's a race car, there's a dump truck, there's actually there wasn't a dump truck, but they're like just generic different types of vehicles, and then they all had the personality of their driver, and their driver had their own story. So then every level just took place. The first game takes place only in and around Los Angeles. And that's because that's where the guy who runs the tournament, and whose name is Calypso. So basically the general story of the game is that every year, this guy named Calypso, who you don't know if he's magical or mystical or not, even though it's pretty apparent that he is, it takes place in the far future, apocalyptic future, and every year he holds the Twisted Metal tournament. And if you're like this crazy, like insane or really righteous person, or someone who wants something to do with the tournament, you'll get an email. And if you get in the email, it just says, "Will you drive?" And that's all it says. And if you get that email, you know you've been invited to compete in the Twisted Metal tournament. And if you do, it means you're in a tournament to the death, to be the last one standing. And so then in the first couple games, there's just like maybe 8 or 9 stages. And in the first game, like I said, everything takes place around Los Angeles. And so there's different, like there's like a snow level. There's on the rooftops where your car can drive off and you can die just by falling off the roof, which adds some different difficulty. There's like tall buildings. There's grass area like on a farm, stuff like that. Yeah. And so each level is its own theme, and then you're one of the cars put in there, and then you have every car has a special move, which it really appealed to my WWE side of me. Like every person has their own story. They all basically have their own theme song because each one of the levels is based on one of the characters. And so
hell yes.
Right. And so that was kind of more later games. Like the first game didn't have that, but like later on there's like the grandma who got mad at all the young kids in her neighborhood, and so she drives a Bigfoot. Well, so one of the levels is like in her neighborhood, and so there's like a little town basically. So the why the game is cool. The combat and everything in it is fine. Like the gameplay is all passable. But the thing that really stuck with me is like all these characters and their stories. So when you start the game, you pick which character you want, and then you go through different like a bracket basically of these death matches.
Yeah.
And basically you just drive around the level and you collect like different missiles. Like there's homing missiles, there's a power missile which only shoots straight, but it shoots straight for as far as the level goes. There's a missile that you can shoot through walls. There's a very low power but like barrage of missiles. There's all sorts of different like ways you can just ram people. But every car and every person had a special move. Just like in WWE, you have your finisher. And the special moves were all awesome. They all had to do with the character themselves. Like one of them was a flamethrower. One of them in the second game, one of the characters' name was Mr. Slam, or maybe that's the third game. But it was basically like a big a caterpillar type of thing. And so he had like these jaws on the front. And so his special move was if you touched a car, it would like grab the car and like lift him up and like slam him down a bunch. And so that's how the combat worked. So then what would happen is you'd start and you go through like 3 levels, and then you'd be like halfway through the game at that point. And when you start the game, you get a little bit of backstory of the character. Then you'd get halfway through the game and you beat the mini boss, and you get a little bit more story. And then if you get to the end and you beat the main bad guy, then your character gets to go to Calypso, and the winner of the tournament every year gets one wish, and it's any wish they desire. It can be anything in the whole universe. It can be, there's no limitations. And so like I'm trying to think of a good example because there's so many games and they all have different characters and things. A lot of the characters do follow through. Like Sweet Tooth is like one of the coolest characters, and his character is
it's a great name too.
Sweet Tooth, frankly. And his I'm sure, I don't know if you can tell from all the stuff I've showed you, but basically he drives an ice cream truck.
He drives the ice cream truck.
Drives the ice cream truck, and so like in the games when he does his special missile, it plays like a little ding 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 song, and like his special missile is always like the head that's on his truck like flies off, and like it makes this crazy like clown noise that's like synonymous with the game, this type of laughing clown thing, and then like blows up and stuff. And so like his story though,
why
is
would it not blow up?
The driver of Sweet Tooth, his name is Needles Kane, and basically he's a guy who would lure people and children and just kill them. He was a serial killer, and he was insane. And so in each of the different games, there's like different ways that the story connects, and like his brother also drives in one of the things to try to like stop him because he's insane. And there's all these different ways. One of the other characters that people really like in all of the games is a character called Outlaw, and Outlaw is always a police vehicle. And so in the first game, it's driven by a guy who's heard of this tournament and he's trying to put a stop to it. So his goal is to win and put a stop to it. So if you play through as his character, at the end of one of the core fundamental aspects of the game is that when you win, your character wishes for whatever he's been trying to like win the tournament for.
Yeah.
Calypso, who's like this, he has this amazing voice. And I should just load a clip and play it for you, but I didn't think of that in advance. But he has this, the voice actor for Calypso is like so iconic and awesome. And the point is when you win, like you ask him your wish and he twists the wish on you to be like eternal torment for you. Like that's how it always works. It's a monkey's
paw, basically.
Exactly.
Right?
And so like with Outlaw, for example, I can't remember exactly what he wishes, but in the first game, if you win with Outlaw, the police officer, he wishes to do something to put a stop to something or make sure there's no twist melter or something. Somehow Calypso turns his words on him and he sends his car just floating into outer space for all of eternity. Well, in the second game, his sister, who's also a police woman on the force, wants to get him back. So if you go through the game, like in the beginning, she tells you that that's what she wants. In the middle half, you see flashbacks of them when they were children. And at the end, she gets him back to Earth. And so then in all the games from then on, it's both of them in the car driving together. And so their special movies, like one of them like leans out of the car and like shoots or does this. And usually Outlaw special is like a electronic bolt that like connects from the cherries on the top of the police car to the other cars and just like follows them around. So that's like the core aspect of the game. And it's just all about the different characters and how they're connected. One of the other cool aspects of the game is the levels themselves were always like super, super, super clever and really cool. For example, one of the characters in all of the games is named Roadkill, and he's sort of like this kind of like an insane guy who thinks that he was abducted by aliens. And so as the games go further and further, they lean a little bit more into like the alien aspect of it, to the point where my favorite of the original 4 games, number 3, one of the levels is in Hangar 13, which is supposedly a part of Area 51. And basically the whole level is a very small level inside this spaceship. And so there's multiple levels to it. You can drive on top of the spaceship. You can be inside. And there's like secret areas that if you know, like there's one panel that looks like every other panel. But if it accidentally gets shot enough times, it will go away. And then there's a portal inside. Drive into the portal. It takes you to the top. Then you blow the thing that's on there up. Then you can go back down to the bottom and shoot and find the secret passageway into the spaceship. And then you get a special power up in the spaceship that allows you to push a button. And then from the top of the spaceship, like these like lightning bolts just like attack everything outside of the spaceship. And so like all the levels had like really cool special things like that in them. Like in the city level, there's a way that you could like knock over a crane that would knock over this, that would then expose this, that you could use to shoot this special laser. So though that was one of the cool aspects of the game, one of the main characters that a lot of people remember from the games is Axel, and he is the guy who is this guy, who's his dad. When he was little, his dad was abusive to him, and he put him in this contraption that he made where he cut off his arms and his legs and attached him to these 2 giant tractor wheels. And made this contraption so he drives around like this. And like his thing is he wants to learn throughout the whole game who did this to him, because he doesn't know. Well, so that at the end of the first game, he finds out that it was his father the whole time. And so then he like wants revenge on his father. And then in the third game, he like wants out of it. So they take him out of it. But of course, he has no arms and legs. So he can't do anything. And so in the game after that, he like goes back into the thing one more time to try to like... So all the games are connected. All this stuff is... It's so cool.
Wild. It reminds me a lot, because I do love a lot of fighting games. I used to be really into Tekken, and Soul Calibur is still a thing that's like definitely a thing for me. So like I love hearing about interconnected player versus whatever stories.
Yes.
And like battlegrounds that have something to do with the character.
And I was going to say that.
So good.
Yeah, the levels in all these games are like something that don't get talked about enough, but like there's always, every level has like different special hidden paths. They all have like really cool ways that they connect with the characters and the stories. And in the first couple of games, they're a lot more like generic. Like one of my favorite levels is Paris, because you like go up into the Eiffel Tower and you can like jump off, and then there's like all sorts of different like Paris landmarks, and there's another level that's Hong Kong, and so then
this sounds so much like Tekken. I love it. This sounds so good.
The last aspect of the game that I want to talk about, which we'll talk about video game soundtracks later, but like this, the way this affected me, I can't. Every one of these games has the most incredible soundtrack ever. It's just like these games are maybe one of the reasons that I got into metal, which is like one of my favorite genres of music.
Hell yes.
And this all came from that. And like in the first 2 games, it's just instrumental stuff that was created for the game. But starting with Twisted Metal 3 and 4, they had soundtracks that were made, and the guy who did most of the soundtrack work was Rob Zombie, who is someone that I fell in love with.
Of course it was Rob Zombie.
Right, and he's actually in game 4, and he drives the Dragula, which is the Monsters car and stuff. Like that's his car in the game. And they got official rights from the Monsters people and stuff to like do it and whatnot. Because he owns that car now in real life. Rob Zombie owns the actual prop car that they had, the Dragula.
Well done, sir.
Which that's his biggest hit song was Dragula and stuff. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But so the amount of music that these games exposed me to really influenced my music growing up. And then like when I was little enough that I was still playing with like cars and stuff. I had this big tub of cars, and I wouldn't play like races or anything. I just played Twisted Metal with all my cars. So like everyone had their own special move, their own music, their own whatever, and so like it really impacted my like playing with toys and stuff growing up too.
That's cute.
So,
that really does open up your imagination to different things.
Yes, and so the music is one thing I definitely want to say. Like even the PS3 game that came out, it was like a big deal. What songs were going to be on the soundtrack, and so like just go look up like Twisted Metal playlists on Spotify and stuff. Every song is great.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Fantastic instrumental, like heavy rock / like metal music. Very cool stuff. And for it to be done back in like 1994 and 1995 when the first two games came out, like it was even music that was ahead of the time. And it's just cool how they incorporate, like every level has its own song basically. And
that's impressive as hell.
And then of course, on top of all that, I'm sure you're aware that you can put these PlayStation games in your CD player and listen to the level music and stuff.
That I did not know. That's actually really impressive.
Oh yeah,
I need to actually take those home now.
A lot of PS1 games, not all of them, but a lot of PS1 games, you can just put it right in a CD player and it plays. And I've probably listened to the songs on these more than I even played them.
That's so cool.
So growing up, like I have a ton of PS1 games that I would listen to the soundtracks all the time, and that's one of the coolest aspects of PlayStation 1, period. Like it's so awesome that the discs could do that. And it's something that I really, really miss being able to do now. I mean, so you can just go to Spotify and listen to anything now, but...
True. Well, not all video game soundtracks are on Spotify. Speaking of which, the one that I'm about to talk about next,
which you can I don't believe
is on Spotify, which is really sad because the music for the one that I'm about to talk to you about next is Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean.
Oh, that just sounds ridiculous.
It does, and also there's Baten Kaitos Origins, which is the prequel to that series. But the music is done by Motori Sakuraba, who does the music for the Tales games as well, like Tales of the Abyss, Tales of Symphonia, Tales of Blah Blah Graces. No reference to me, but Baten Kaitos came out, and I have the whole history of it over here. But this is yet again another lesser known one, so I'm sure you're all surprised at this point, right? These first two though were really formative for me. Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings, and the Lost Ocean, as well as Baten Kaitos Origins, were developed by Monolith Soft and Trey Crescendo. This is another turn-based battle JRPG battle system. It came out in 2003, so the artwork is significantly better than what you would see in something like Legend of Dragoon, and the music is so symphonic and gorgeous. I remember there were times in this game where literally I would just want to stand in an area in order to hear the full song cycle through. So
when you hear the music in the game, it's when you're walking around the environments? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they do have CDs, like they have full CDs of all the music, but like when I discovered it was just in the game. And the most interesting aspect of this game was how they played around with this story. Technically, you are not the main character protagonist of this story. Callus is the protagonist. You are something called a guardian spirit, which is attached to Callus, and Callus will talk to you from time to time saying, "What do you think of this, Grace? Like, I don't really know if I trust this guy." Or like, "Oh, Grace, I don't want to go in that direction. That seems really strange. But I'll go if you really want to." Like, if you have this guardian spirit attached to yourself in this world, it means that you've become more powerful. Like, it's a rare thing to have happen. So it's not unheard of to have someone just talking to their guardian spirit.
Okay.
And you're probably not going to play this game, and
feel free to say whatever you want.
Spoil as much as I like.
Yeah.
There's some pretty insane things that go on. Personally, the environments of this game were something that really, really stuck with me to the point where like I'm really inspired by it in a lot of different ways. There's just like beautiful pre-rendered backgrounds. The character designs were really incredible. But that goes without saying. The painterly aspect of how they pushed every single area that you went in. The first one is very like farming village. The second one is a cloud island.
Okay.
Like an island just made of clouds. It's
cool.
Beautiful. So like you go around and like there's different levels of just like flora and fauna just like and coming out from the clouds themselves. And it's called Diadem. It's so pretty. Then there's Anui, which is like literally like a whole island. These are floating islands, by the way. These are islands floating in the sky, so you'll fly to different islands as you go through the areas.
Okay.
And so the third place is like this tropical climate, beautiful area. Fourth one is like a land of dreams. So like there's a storybook village, there's a candy village, there's like all of these crazy villages, and they're all so well designed that like you could get lost in all of them. But there's some really unexpected turns that the story does make. And of course the story is any JRPG. Like the story is the calling, story and characters are the two calling cards. If you don't have those two, it's not a compelling JRPG experience, I have found. Because this battle system in particular, card-based battle fighting, you can take it or leave it. It's a little bit tedious for a lot of people. I loved it personally, but I have a lot of patience when it comes to stuff like that. My sister could not stand it. She watched me do it for some of it, and then she just went off and did her own thing for a lot. But I loved it. Like, Callus, you learn throughout the game, he's actually kind of not a nice guy. And, like, he makes friends with a lot of kind of nice people, but you make friends with, like, pretty much someone from every land that you go to. Funny enough, you make friends with someone from the evil Empire country, and he's one of the most stand-up dudes who's, like, standing up for everyone else's country. You learn when you go back to the Empire, he's, like, the dude that's, like, crapped on by his whole family. They hate him because he loves, like, all of these other countries and cultures, and he's a very nice person, and he's, like, they're just, like, why are you not meaner like us, basically? Why don't you hate other cultures like we do? Why aren't you xenophobic? So, it's fun. You find out midway through the game, and this is a total spoiler, so skip over it if you're going to go through Baten Kaitos. You find out midway through the game that Callus has been using you, the guardian spirit, for your power. He tosses you aside in order to side with the bad guys. You end up latching onto the second character.
That's awesome.
And then you have to fight your way back to him to save him.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
It's such a weird turn of events.
That's a cool story, like, arc. That's like a cool story beat, though. Like,
yeah. It's wild. This is one of the first, no, I wouldn't say it's one of the first games, but it was one of the games that I remember really, really making me latch onto the not only the storyline, but the soundtrack. The soundtrack really stuck with me. So that's something that I still listen to a whole lot, and I use in my D&D games all the time. So
now, when you say the soundtrack, it's because I don't generally listen to video game soundtracks that often at all, really, ever, to be honest. Like, I enjoy it in context of the game, but I never listen to video game soundtracks for the most part.
I do it all the time.
Even though I just said that I do that with Twisted Metal like a lot when I was little. To me, that was different because those are like more like normal songs. But but like, is it like, are you talking about like 8-bit, like 16-bit music, or are you talking like...
I'm talking about full symphony music.
Okay. Like an orchestra type thing.
I'm not going to say it's a full orchestra. I don't think that they had a full orchestra for a lot of it, but I think for a lot of these songs, they at least had multiple violinists and background, like instrumentalists.
Okay.
Because there are parts where I'm like, that is a violinist playing in the background. And there's a lot of it you'll have is like very synthy, like when you're running through different dungeons and they're trying to pump you up.
Sure.
But like the most powerful songs that they've got are usually like a mixture of synth as well as orchestra. So it's really striking. It's very like I won't even say it's not prog rock. It's probably more weird alternative rock.
Okay.
And also symphony along with it and weird stuff.
Yeah.
And the story just goes in so many wild directions. I feel like the story of Baten Kaitos is kind of like a fever dream. At one point, you jump off of the floating islands in order to go into like the maelstrom of clouds beneath and see what's there. And it's like all these crazy masked people are there. It's so cool.
I love it.
Oh man, it's wild. But if you don't have patience for the whole turn-based card system, I completely understand. It's a completely different flavor of battle than a lot of people want to deal with. So if you do, though, I would highly recommend this game.
Yeah. That's kind of always been a big bummer for me because it sounds like I would really enjoy the like really super high fantasy, really detailed aspects of the story of these games, but I just don't enjoy that style. Maybe someday I'll play one, it'll click, and then I'll be able to go back in time and play like all of these amazing games.
These wild old ones.
But for now, I just can't get to it. Now let me ask this with this Baten Kaitos and then the one you talked about before, the Dragoon one. Are there other like you have figures of them, but like are there like mangas for them and like different things outside of the game that like go with them or
I think there was a novel and a manga for Legend of Dragoon. And with Baten Kaitos, there was Origins and Monolith Soft as well as Tre Crescendo are both interested in doing another one. But unfortunately, they are not. They just don't have the funding. And the games don't make as much money as they need to.
How old is this Baten Kaitos one?
Came out 2003. So
okay.
It's been a minute.
Pretty, but not like in the 90s.
It's not like 1998 with Legend of Dragoon. Right, but the thing is, with a lot of these, because they cater to the Japanese audience, a lot of like the novel as well as the manga that came out for Dragoon never came out here. So I would have to find it online somewhere.
Right. I just was curious because I know a lot of the Japanese RPGs that I hear about are the ones I hear about are obviously the like main big ones that everybody knows. And I always see a lot of other things associated with them other than just the game and like the soundtrack, because the soundtrack's always big too. But
they have like they'll sometimes have like an audio drama that will come out. That's a big thing in the Tales of games. They have a ton of those.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love
again,
Japanese
all Japanese. I do too. I love it. But the thing is, like, it's not really available to us, you know?
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe the world will get a little smaller as the internet grows.
Okay. What is your second game, though?
Yes. Now, if you thought that was nuts, we're going to talk about what is widely considered to be the most ridiculous story ever told in any medium ever. And that is, I'm talking about Metal Gear.
Oh my god. I tried playing the first one of that.
Yeah. So it's how do I want to even start with this? So
my one friend is obsessed with it.
I have well, first of all these figures that you see behind me, these are all Metal Gear action figures. I have well, I'm not going to bother with them too much.
You got to do the Metal Gear voice. You got to do the voice. You got to do Solid Snake. Metal Gear.
Metal Gear.
Thank you.
Metal
Thank you.
Gear.
I don't have the bass in my voice to do
Snake.
it. So.
Snake. Snake. We totally blew out our microphones there. Okay, so how much do you know about Metal Gear then?
Almost nothing.
Okay.
I played through the half of the first one, and that was because my roommate was very good at it because I was very bad at it.
Yeah.
She beat all of the stuff for me.
The first one is interesting because it came out back... Well, when I say first one, if anyone's watching this is like a big Metal Gear fan, like, yes, I know that there was Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2 on the NES and the Super Nintendo, but I'm just going to ignore those because everyone does and whatever. No one's ever played those. Those games suck. So what I'm talking about, of course, is Metal Gear Solid on the PS1. Mm-hmm. And this game is, I mean, talk about defining... For a lot of people, this Metal Gear is the game that started to make people think of video games not as just Mario, not as just something running side by side. This and this game came out in 1998 as well, I believe. Yeah, 1998 as well. So, of course, there were all sorts of really great stories being told in video games at the time. But for the masses, a lot of people, this was their like, oh my gosh, a video game can be like a movie. Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons for that. This game is one of the first games to have like credits going as you're playing. It starts with an intro cutscene and you play through it like a movie. You go through the first area. Yeah. The directors of the game, like their names are popping up just like credits would in a movie. You get through the first area, the title screen comes up. And while this game wasn't necessarily the first game to do all of those things, it was the first like mass popular game to do that. And it totally like set it apart from everything else. So... then we have, after that game, and I'll talk a little bit about that one in a second, but then we have, after that game, we have Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. Mm-hmm. Then we have Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. Those are both on PS2. Mm-hmm. Then I have the Metal Gear HD collection, which is all of those games. Then we have Metal Gear Solid 4 on PS3. This was a launch title for the PS3. People forget about that.
People love that game.
Yeah. It was actually when it was released, it was actually very, and even still to this day, it is, I'll talk about this game in a second. And then we just have the 2 games that came out on PS5, which are basically the same thing. We have Ground Zeroes, which is the prequel, kind of 1/8 of a game leading into Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain, which is one of the biggest, like, craziest, like, I don't want to say disappointments because the game's not disappointing, but like one of the worst for a story. The story of Metal Gear is like so legendary for being crazy, but also for being like beloved. And this game series, just more than any other game I've probably ever played, the story and the way it connects and the way that it goes from place to place to place within the story is very dependent on the creator, Hideo Kojima. Widely considered one of the greatest game directors of all time. And the fact that while they were making Metal Gear Solid 5 on the PS4, he had a really bad falling out with Konami, the company that had produced all of these games. And the fact that when the game came out, people realized that his vision was not fulfilled and that we didn't get his vision for the finale of the Metal Gear Solid series is like one of the biggest story disappointments that I think has ever been in like the history. Like if George R.R. Martin died tomorrow and no one ever knew what happened in the rest of the Game of Thrones books, obviously we got the TV show, which whatever, who gives a crap about that? But it's that level of disappointing, and it's really, really sad that we didn't get that. And unless Sony manages to purchase the Metal Gear IP from Konami, I don't know if we'll ever get a satisfying conclusion to the story.
An ending.
However, I will say the actual real conclusion to this story chronologically is Metal Gear Solid 4. But so I'm not going to go through the story a ton because there's just so much and it's so complicated.
There's so much. It's like going through Kingdom Hearts.
It is. Which
is a whole nother beast.
Right.
But
Except in my opinion, it's even more complicated than that. And I understand how complicated Kingdom Hearts is. Kingdom Hearts is complicated. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say it like that. Kingdom Hearts is incredibly complicated and intricate. Yeah. Metal Gear Solid is incredibly complicated and weird. Like, there's a lot of things in it that people, if you don't take the time to like look into it, none of it makes sense. But if you understand it enough, then you find the satisfaction comes from the ways that everything does make sense. Yeah. If that makes sense.
No. I got you.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Metal Gear and like what the story is, the basic gist, at least of the first game, is that there is a soldier who he's world renowned as like a very good individual soldier, sort of like a one-man, not a wrecking crew, but like like a spy thing. It's actually very James Bond-ish in a lot of ways. But it's also not very, it's like a Japanese James Bond, but like it's all about the United States. The whole story, everything focuses on the United States. Even though it was all made in Japan by a Japanese man, Hideo Kojima. But basically, the basic story is that there's this one-man soldier who's like this great infiltrator. He's like a sort of a spy. He can infiltrate places and get things done. And in the first game, you have to infiltrate this base. You play as Solid Snake, and that's his codename, Solid Snake. And you have to infiltrate this base to kind of figure out what's going on there. And throughout the game, you find out that there's all sorts of things happening. You meet all sorts of really cool, crazy characters that are going to stay with you throughout the whole series. And then there's multiple endings to the game. And there's multiple path deviations that can happen in the game as well, depending on how you play and what you do. So like the story and the way that the game was made and the way the game tells the story is actually a really cool aspect of the game itself. Rather than just having a cool story, like how the story is told to you is a really neat aspect of all the Metal Gear games. But spoiler for Metal Gear Solid 1, you find out throughout the duration of the game that one of the guys who was on your team originally turns out to be your twin brother. However, even more of a spoiler for Metal Gear Solid and the core crux of the series is you find out at the very end of the first game that you and your twin brother are clones of the greatest soldier that has ever lived in history. And that the government had a secret project called the Les Enfants Terribles project that took this soldier.
French for reasons, I guess.
Well, that's what the French scientists were the ones that headed it up. But but basically they took the greatest soldier to have ever lived, who was taught by the greatest soldier that had lived before that. And they basically created this super soldier, this individual human being that was like this amazing super soldier. And they took his DNA and used that to clone these two children, basically. And then they both grew up, and one of them was working for the government, and that's the character that you play as. And the other one was the brother that was thrown away because he was considered to be the inferior brother. And he becomes the sort of main protagonist of the whole series. Yes, that's Liquid Snake.
Okay, thank you.
So there's Solid Snake and Liquid Snake. And so that's the first game. And then the story-wise, from there it goes into all sorts of crazy directions.
That's a good setup for just wild storyline shenanigans.
Right. And there's the aspects of the story that are so cool are like so unique to only Metal Gear. Like there's so many story things that are in Metal Gear that I've never seen in anything else. And that's one of the things that I think that's so cool about it. And I'm not going to spoil too much more apart from that, maybe until we get to like, but anyway, I want to talk real quick about like some of the cool video game things that Metal Gear Solid has done for the video game world, because the innovations that they came up with in these games is like nuts. And so in this first game on the PS1, the PlayStation 1, and at the very beginning of the game, first of all, one of the core tenets of Metal Gear is that at any point in the game, you could push the select button, which would bring up something that in the game was called your codec. And what your codec was basically like a radio that you had that you could dial different frequencies to, and then you push a button and it sends a signal out at the frequency. And if there's someone at the other end of that frequency, they can connect with you and you can have a conversation with them. And in this game, it was an actual verbal conversation as well as dialogue on the screen.
Yeah.
So that's one of the core mechanics of the game. So throughout the game, you're being told through your codec, which is some little earpiece you have, like, yep, exactly, which is my phone ringer.
Nice.
But yeah, and my text message thing is the exclamation point when a guy sees you.
Oh my god! That was me constantly playing that game.
But exclamation point, and then, what's this? Just a box? A question mark above the head? Just a box.
Just a box,
Just a box. Anyway, so because of this codec system, one of the cool aspects of the game was that at any point, no matter what you were doing, you could hit the button and call either Mei Ling, who was the doctor lady who was kind of assigned to help your physical and mental health as you're going through the game, the character in the game. Snake. You could call the Colonel, who is the guy that's like head of your department. You could also call Naomi, who is the sort of your. Actually, Mei Ling was your mental doctor, and Naomi was your physical doctor, like your body doctor. And she injects you with nanomachines where you go in and cause mess up your whole life. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Because of this cool mechanic in the game that I've never seen in any other game. If you could be walking around in any of these levels, you could be looking at a machine, like at a soda dispenser, and call them, and Campbell would be like, I'd sure love one of those things, whatever. Man, I could sure use a soda drink right now. Like, it was all based purely on the location of where you were in the level. And then in a lot of areas, like if you'd walk past something, your thing would ding and it'd bring it up and they'd tell you what you need to do next to advance or whatever. And it was one of the primary like driving forces of the game. Yeah. So there is, so many Easter eggs and sorts of things that they fit in all these games that have to do with that.
That's what really draws you into a world. Like that's a compelling thing.
For sure. And so one of the coolest things I've ever experienced in a video game ever was way back in 1998 or probably 1999 when I got this. In like the second level of the game, you meet a character who you have to infiltrate this base and meet up with a person, the DARPA chief. And so you meet up with this guy, the DARPA chief, in this cell, and he gives you a disc of information, and then he dies, and you don't know why, and it's a big mystery, and you go on through the game, and you're now, because of what he told you, the information he told you, you're supposed to go meet up with one of the other main characters of the game, which is Meryl. And so you go you're trying to meet up with Meryl, and you're stuck in this area. It's this like, there's like two tanks, two guards walking around, up around a lower level. And the game is set up in such a way that you can get through areas with key cards. And so you have levels of key cards. So if you have a level 1 key card, you can get through all the level 1 doors. If you have a level 4 key card, you can get through every level that's 1, 2, 3, 4 levels. So you can't get through this area, and you're like, what the heck? How do I advance the game? And you're sitting there, and you're like, how do I do this? And you call the colonel, and he keeps telling you, you need to call Meryl. You need to call Meryl. And you call Mei Ling, because you can pick which person you're calling. Yeah. And they're all like, you need to call Meryl, don't you? Snake, don't you think you better call Meryl? That's my impression of Mei Ling. Snake. And
then Colonel.
It's so great because she has...
Who do I call?
Mei Ling has such a crush on Snake. It's so great. But
I just love Colonel's voice. I love Colonel's voice. I love Snake when he's talking to Colonel.
David Hayter's the voice actor for Snake, is one of the great voice actors.
Is he really?
And the guy who does the voice for Campbell is also a very famous voice actor who does all sorts of cool things. But anyway, the reason I'm going through all this is to set it up. They keep telling you to check the disc that the DARPA chief gave you. They're like, look on the back of the disc. Look on the back of the disc. And I remember for days just sitting there trying to go through every area. You can go back, you can backtrack in the game, backtracking to the very beginning, looking in the water that you first come up in the opening credits. Like, how do I contact Meryl? They keep telling you, look at the back of the disc, look at the back of the disc. Well, what do they want you to do? They want you to look at the back of the disc. Right here is Meryl's frequency. The game does not tell you Meryl's frequency until you yourself in the real world look at the back of the disc that you purchased and see her frequency right there. That's how you advance the game.
And well, I'll touch on this later, but like there are games that mess with your mind. Oh yeah. And I love it so much.
That is one example of what Metal Gear has done. The other things Metal Gear has done are just like insane. They're really cool. Most people know there's one of the boss characters in the game. All of the Metal Gear games have a bit of a formula, and it's actually pretty awesome because in the game they explain why there's a formula, which is so freaking cool, and it's great storytelling, and I'm not going to go into all that because it's too complicated. But the basic formula is that you're an individual person, and you have to take down like a group of like 4 or 5 people, and they're sort of all like superpowered people. So they're basically like the bosses throughout the game. Well, one of the bosses in the first game, and is probably considered, I think, one of the most famous bosses in any video game that's ever been, is the Psycho Mantis boss fight. And he's this kind of like very skinny, very creepy looking Silent Hill type dude who like floats in the air and like attacks you with his mind. He has telekinetic powers. But one of the coolest things in this game is that when this game was made in 1998, you would have a memory card in your PlayStation, right? So in order to save your game, you'd have a memory card, and you'd plug it in, and you'd have 2 slots on your PlayStation that you could have 2 memory cards in. When you're fighting Psycho Mantis, if you have any other Konami games, which at the time Konami was one of the biggest video game companies in the world, they had a bunch of games, Parappa the Rapper, I think, a bunch of other different things. If you had any other Konami games on your memory card, Psycho Mantis would tell you while you're fighting him, "Oh, I see you like Castlevania.
Yeah.
But I see you haven't played this Castlevania." And you're like, what in the heck? How could they know that? You know, because this is 1998 we're talking about.
This is wild, yeah.
And then at the same time in that same fight, the only way you could win would be to unplug your controller from controller port 1 and plug it into controller port 2 because Psycho Mantis could read your movements. You could not get a hit in on Psycho Mantis while your controller was plugged into controller port 1 because he knew what you were doing.
That was a very famous move. Yeah.
Yes.
It's really cool.
It's so amazing. And there's just...
It's very ahead of its time.
Every one of the Metal Gear games has aspects of that. Like, one of my favorite ones is in Metal Gear Solid. This is kind of the same thing, but also it's like a self-referential break the fourth wall thing. Because there's 2 discs on here, when you get to this certain stairwell in Metal Gear Solid 1 and it's time to change the disc, Otacon, one of your characters that you meet up with throughout the games and becomes your partner basically for the rest of the games, he calls you and tells you, Snake, it's time to insert the second disc. And you're like, oh, this is awesome. Like, what a cool storytelling device for them to call you and tell you to insert the second disc. He's like, no, Snake, seriously. You need to open the tray, take out the disc, and put in the second disc. And we'll continue our story after there, but trust me, you need to do that. And so then, like, 15 years later, when you're playing Metal Gear Solid 4...
Yeah.
And you go back to the location from Metal Gear Solid 1, and you go to that same stairwell, Otacon calls you and he goes, Snake, don't you have to put in the second disc? And Snake goes, what are you talking about? It's a Blu-ray disc. You could fit all the information on it. And that's just so freaking cool.
It's really cool.
It's so cool. There's also... Every one of the games features like a torture sequence that you have to like push a button to make it through. And it's very hard. Like you have to like smash that button for long periods of time to make it through the torture sequence.
Another Kingdom Hearts thing, but yeah.
Now
they don't torture, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
You can at any point give up. And if you give up, that changes the outcome of the, at least in the first game, if you give up, it changes the outcome of who lives and dies at the end of the game. Now that they don't tell you that, it's just something that happens. Like there's 2 outcomes to the game where a specific person dies or lives. And if you give up during the torture sequence, one of the main characters dies and the whole ending of the game is changed. If you make it through the torture sequence, that character lives and you make it through the end of the game with that person. In which that's a cool mechanic in itself, but all of the games after that have their own sort of a version of that torture sequence. But in Metal Gear Solid 4, when you're having that torture sequence, they put you in a jail cell, and while you're in the jail, it's your job to get out. And there's different ways that you can do it to get out. But one of the things you can do is if you don't get out, they take you and they give you a torture session basically. And if you give up or you don't make it through or you decide to just like let it go, then they'll torture you until you pass out and they'll put you back in your cell. So you're in your cell for a second time, which doesn't happen if you get through the torture session. But that second time, when they put you in the cell, your character Snake falls asleep, and then while he's sleeping, you have a dream and you play another Konami game.
That's wild.
A whole level.
That's pretty cool.
You play a whole level from a hack and slash Konami game that was never released.
That's so fun.
And then in that same, this is another example of the breaking the fourth wall thing. In that same level, because Metal Gear Solid 4 was on the PS3 and it was a launch title for the PS3, people who are familiar with PlayStation will know that the PS3 was the controller that had introduced the Rumble, the DualShock controller, the Rumble controller was the first time you ever had Rumble. Well, in Metal Gear Solid 4, Naomi calls you, and she's the doctor lady. She tells you that Snake tells her that his arm is hurt. It's sore. And so she tells you to put the controller up to your arm in real life. You, the person, put the controller on your arm, and then she like shakes it a little bit and vibrates it. And Snake's like, oh yeah, that feels better. Like that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is so cool.
It's very cool.
It is the coolest. And okay, so we just took a break for a second because Grace pointed out to me how ridiculously long we've been talking about all this stuff. And that's only because we love it all so much. However, I promise, swear to God, we're going to go a little faster from here on out, okay? I want to finish one thing about Metal Gear real quick. This is something I was really excited to show you, Grace, because you got to show me some of your art books during the anime video. But this is when I worked at Hastings, which I talked about in the anime video a lot. As I've mentioned many times before, one of almost everything that I own that's cool came from Hastings. But what I used to do is when I would find a property or something that I loved, like Metal Gear, for example, I would just type it into our computer and see what we had that was available to order. And if it looked cool or whatever, I would order it. And so I ordered this from Hastings. This is the person that does all of the sort of like concept art, but also in-game art for some of cutscenes in the first games, and then different aspects of art. But I thought that you would really appreciate this. The artwork that's in here is a very specific style.
Whoa!
It's very
love the strong shadows.
Yes, all of it is this type of a very sort of chaotic.
It feels very Batman to me. It's really cool.
The artist's name is Allison something. Ashley Wood. And I don't actually know if Ashley Wood is a female or a male person. I don't know, and it doesn't really matter because the artwork's awesome regardless. But I just thought that you would get a kick out of this. I will say, and not to go off on art forever, but this is not my favorite style of art. I think I would prefer a much less stylistic. I like more of
rendition.
I like more realistic sort of stuff, but I love the way that this stuff works, and it's a really cool book that I have, and I'm glad I have it. I also own that's
the kind of stuff that so intrigues me. Like, she really knows the planes of a face, which is really, really cool to see.
And it's I love it because it's almost like unfinished. It's like intentionally unfinished.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like even if you just look at the front, like it's stylized in such a way that it looks almost unfinished. And that's the aspect of it that I really enjoy. I also have with Metal Gear the two novelizations of the first two, and they are crap. It's terrible. Don't get them. Don't read them. Please just play the games instead.
Oh no!
It's just the cutscenes. Basically, it's not very good.
I'm sure there's fan fiction writers that can do much better, and I'm
sure
sad
there
to
is.
say that.
But while we're still on Metal Gear, before we end, I just want to say, if you ask me what my favorite video game series of all time is, I would say Metal Gear. Like, Metal Gear is one of my all-time favorite stories that I've ever gotten to experience, like in any medium. And I'm sure in the future it will probably be bastardized a lot by whatever Konami decides to do with it. If they make a movie or if they make more games, like they released Metal Gear Survive 2 years ago, which is just a terrible, like, it's really sad to see something that was such a cool and beloved IP now being treated very poorly, and we'll just end up having to see what happens. It's so
weird how many crossovers there are with Metal Gear and Kingdom Hearts. With Metal Gear, you got God, what's his name? The dude that makes it. You just said him earlier.
Hideo Kojima.
Thank you. And then with Kingdom Hearts, you have Nomura, and they're really they're the driving forces between these two games.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like when you start deviating from that is when like you get into some weird territory. But them within themselves are they're madmen. They're absolute madmen. And so I won't go too far into it because I mentioned Kingdom Hearts later on. But yeah.
And I just want to say one last thing. The Metal Gear soundtrack is also incredible. Very much like the reason I asked earlier about if a lot of Japanese RPGs have like a theme song was because I was wondering if that was more of a Japanese thing, because Metal Gear games are a very Japanese feeling game. Like, they feel very Japanese. Yeah. And every one of the games, very much like a James Bond movie, each James Bond movie has its theme song that's like sung by a pop star at the time or whatever. And it's a huge orchestra, big production put into the theme song. Every Metal Gear game has one of those. It has a theme song. It's not sung by someone that's famous. But one of the cool things about it is, like, Snake Eater, for example, which is the third game in the series and my second favorite game after Metal Gear Solid 4. Snake Eater has a theme song that's sung in English, and it's an awesome song that sounds very much like a James Bond theme song. But there's also a Japanese version of the theme song that was in the Japanese version of the game that's a totally different song with different instrumentation, sung by a man instead of a woman. And it's all so incredible. The soundtracks to the Metal Gear games are so unique and so cool. Like, I highly recommend to anybody that really enjoys video game soundtracks to check out the Metal Gear soundtracks. And then
I'll check it out.
One more thing before we move on. I forgot to do this for Twisted Metal, but I have to show you now that I've unearthed it in my pile of stuff here. This is a pointillism that I made in 2002 when I was a sophomore in high school. So this is how much I loved Twisted Metal back then.
Oh my god, we all picked something crazy. I remember I did a picture of Boromir back in high school from Lord of the Rings, but
all sorts of great stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that was a time.
Okay, we can move on now.
Let's shout out some games, though.
Okay.
I'd love to hear what didn't make the list for you, because I've got my list up here now. And
so when I put this in the doc, I was like, okay, games just to shout out. So these are basically just games that I love and grew up loving that I we don't have the time to talk about.
Yeah.
So I've got to
Same
mention there's 2 older games on this list, and one of them is from the Intellivision way back in the old days, and that's Burger Time. And that game is basically just Pac-Man, but you go around the level and you collect like lettuce for your burger, the tomato, the patty, the bun, whatever, and then you make a burger and you move on to the next level. I just remember having a lot of fun with my sister playing that game and my mom and dad when I was little. So that's a special game to me.
That's so sweet.
Along those same lines, the hardest I've ever laughed in my life at anything is when I got the game International Track and Field for the PlayStation 1. It was a game where it had all these different track and field events like throw the javelin, shot put, 100-meter dash, triple jump, long jump, high jump, pole vault, things like that. And the core mechanic of the game was you had to hold the controller and hit square and circle alternatively. So you could do it however was the best for you, however you could do it the fastest. But you had to do it, and then at the very exact right time, you had to push either triangle or X to like either jump or put the pole down or whatever. And the amount of fun, the amount of hysterical laughter that came out of anyone that would watch it when we would play this, I can't explain it. It was so amazing and so fun. And so I just have to shout that out. It looks hilarious, and that's why it's so fun. And if you mess up, it's just so funny to see someone running as fast as possible with the javelin and then just go...
With the javelin and then just
go
falling over. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It sounds a lot like... okay. We used to play Super Smash Brothers a lot when I was younger, and the sort of crazy situations that you would get into with your friends and like just fighting against each other until like 2 a.m. You just could not stop playing this game. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
We'd be laughing at each other the whole time. Or like you'd set everything like it to only give you like this super hammer, so you were all around the screen just with these super hammers trying to hit each other. It was so good.
Never
that's on my list. Yeah.
Never played a Smash Brothers. I haven't. So.
It's a lot of fun, but
I've heard.
there are people who take it way too seriously, and like that's fine, whatever you want to do.
Sure.
But like if you're playing with your friends, just like have fun with your friends because it's a blast if you're just chilling, you know?
For sure. Then I have to shout out the Tony Hawk games because I spent so many hours playing those. I have all of them somewhere over here, and I played through Tony Hawk 1 and 2, and then I skipped 3 and 4, actually, which 4 is actually a lot of people's favorites. But then I love, personally, Tony Hawk's Underground. Thug is like one of my favorite games on the PS2 era. Tony Hawk's Underground, and then Tony Hawk's Underground 2. And then I love all the other games that came out after that. And I haven't yet got the HD remake of 1 and 2 that just came out at the end of this last year. But
Tony Hawk is great.
I'm going to get it.
I played the early ones. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is great. Then I have to shout out, let's see, the Prince of Persia games originally on the PS2, but then remastered for the PS3. If you're someone that has a PS3 and you've never played those games, even back on PS2, like, I highly recommend those games. It's a fantastic trilogy of games. And so I'm talking about Prince of Persia, the original, then Prince of Persia 2 Towers, and Prince of Persia the Warrior Within. Or not 2 Towers. Prince of Persia 2 Thrones. The 2 Thrones. And then Prince of Persia the Warrior Within.
That sounds like so much fun. I wanted to play those games quite badly. I just never got around to doing it.
Those games are cool because they're all about... You walk into a room or an area, if you will, a level, and then the camera like zooms around the room in the path you should take to the exit, and you have to figure out about how to get to the exit. So it's a puzzle game, but it's only like free-running and movement puzzle.
It's kind of like Zelda a little bit.
It's honestly a platformer.
Yeah.
But it's a different kind of platformer. And then you have the ability to mess up and then rewind time, and that's the fundamental core of the game is the rewinding time. But,
and the setting really plays a part of it too.
Yes, it's like Aladdin, kind of, if you're unfamiliar with what it looks like.
It's very cool.
But the first game itself is a very special game that is a very innocent game. Like, it looks like a Disney movie. It's basically the story is like a Disney movie. I mean, Disney made a Prince of Persia movie. So you can watch that Jerry Bruckheimer movie made by the guy who did the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Highly underrated movie. It's a great movie starring Jake Gyllenhaal. It's a lot of fun. It's a great... I think it's actually great. Starring Jake Gyllenhaal and who I believe is the most beautiful woman on earth, Gemma Arterton. So great stuff.
Yeah, she's
there.
Gorgeous. So is Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal is gorgeous.
Jake Gyllenhaal is gorgeous as well, for sure. But yeah, if you've never played that before, if you have like younger kids and stuff, like the first Prince of Persia is a great game to play through with them. The later games though get much more mature, so just be careful with that if you get into that.
That was the trend, I'm not a huge fan of that trend, or everything turning basically like grayish brown too. Like that was a whole thing.
I love it. I love
you
it.
do?
Make everything dark and dreary and realistic and depressing. I love it.
This is why we both need to be here, because I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, you don't need to do this to a game.
I love
why
it
are
when
you?
yeah, oh yeah. Give me Logan any day over Avengers. Any day. Okay, so then I also have to shout out the Splinter Cell games. Kind of the same thing I was just talking about, all on PS2. You can get them remastered on PS3 if you've never played them. They are very much like the Metal Gear games. Stealth is the core gameplay element of that game.
Yeah.
Very fun. Not the greatest games in the world, but I really hope we get a new one sometime.
Yeah.
I also have to shout out the 3 games that are similar to GTA, but that aren't GTA, and those would be Sleeping Dogs, which is just an individual game on PS3 and was remastered PS4. It's basically like GTA in China with Chinese lore and legends and stuff. It's fantastic.
Interesting.
It's fantastic, and the kung fu aspect of it, like if you're a fan of martial arts movies, this is the game for you. Like the martial arts representation in this game is incredible, and the actual fighting mechanics are very, very, very good, so I highly recommend that to martial arts fans. Then I gotta shout out 2 games that are just super fun, like GTA clones, and that's the Saints Row series and Just Cause. The amount of hours I played Just Cause with my nephew is uncountable. It's amazing. He loves them. It's a very family-friendly game for the most part. Just Cause 4 has a few swear words in it, but other than that, I don't know why they chose to put that in the game. The rest of it's very family-friendly. I guess other than all the shooting, I guess. See, I don't even think of video game shooting.
I guess you are killing people, right?
See, I don't even perceive that as violence, to be honest. Especially,
I mean, we're so dead into it at this point.
But especially the way that, like, when you see, like, Last of Us, and you see Ellie just, like, take the knife and, like, struggle while some guy's choking her, and, like, the knife goes through and the guts come out, and, like, that's violence. Yeah. Shooting someone with a gun in Just Cause and having them like fly 20 feet away, there's no wound on them at all, nothing like that. Like it's okay. Family friendly is not what I should have said, I guess, because that is not true. However,
it depends on really like what it's parental discretion,
right? Which my parents are the strictest parents that have ever been in the history of humankind. It's very innocent violence, I will say. Yeah. It's like Looney Tunes. It's no different than that.
It's arcade violence.
It's just like Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
But anyway, those games are both incredible. Saints Row, not for children. Don't play that with your children. No, Forget I said that with that in regards to that. Then I also have to shout out, like I just said, some of the PS4. PS4 is my favorite generation because it's just so incredible. We've got really realistic stories. So I have to shout out all the PS1 or the PlayStation first party titles. So like I said earlier, that's God of War, Horizon, Last of Us, and Ghost of Tsushima. Incredible games. I have not got to Death Stranding yet or Days Gone, though I plan to play both of those in the coming year. But all of those games are incredible. Those are exactly what we were talking about, Grace. Those are the games in my wheelhouse. Those are third-person action-adventure games with really long, big games with intricate details and stories and characters that are well-written. Fantastic art.
I mean, they took their time to get there, too.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to God of War, those original storylines were all basically just male power fantasies, and now we're getting to see the point where the main character of God of War is a father himself and doing his best to like lead his son and teach him, which is such an incredible turn. Like it is so unexpected, especially to market this to the same audience. It's just like such a cool thing to do. I agree. So I love that.
I agree, but that story wouldn't work without the foundation of the rage that was established in the first. Because I'm one of the few people that will stand up for and fight for the original God of War games and the story that was contained with them.
I didn't play them, so
right. No, that's fine. I'm not speaking to you specifically, but a lot of people like to. God of War on PS4 is like one of the greatest games ever made. It's a flawless. The mechanics of the game are flawless. The story is incredible. You will literally never have a better story told to you in a video game. And the way it all works is great. It's a perfect video game. It's one of my favorite video games of all time. The original God of War games on the PS2 and then God of War 3 on PS3 are some of the best puzzle games of all time. Some of the greatest puzzles I've ever experienced in a game are in God of War 1. Not to mention the fact that as a fan of growing up as a kid who loved like Percy Jackson and who loved the Hercules,
Percy Jackson,
loved
yeah.
Hercules and the Hercules cartoon show on Disney, like getting all of these different cool versions of the different Greek gods and how Kratos goes and kills them all is so cool. And there's a lot of really cool story stuff there, but people just tend to focus on like the rage aspect of the game, which I think is the most important aspect of those games. And you're absolutely right. Like God of War, the modern one, is so much better than all of those because it's playing off of what it came from before. So God of War is great all over. And yeah, Horizon and Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us, those are all great. I could talk about literally any one of those games for a whole podcast.
Yeah, literally, like, I have a bunch of different shout-outs here, and I could go on forever about most of them.
But we're not going to do that. Instead,
we aren't. I'm going to go quick, I promise.
Yeah.
Should I start up?
Well, one more game I have to mention because it's the game I've played most out of any game I've ever played, and that's Rocket League. Rocket League is the game where you play soccer with cars. It's the only multiplayer game, like online multiplayer game I've really ever played other than GTA 5. And I have played, I mean, probably 700 hours of that game, if not more. It came out in 2015. I got it the day it came out, free on PlayStation Plus. I played it every year since then for many hours every year. I am not fantastic at it. I'm not like the upper echelon in the whole world, but I played it enough that I'm fairly competent at it. Somewhere in the video here, I'll put a clip or a video of me playing it because I got videos ready for a lot of this stuff, but we just haven't been playing.
I'm sure it's fun. Yeah, it sounds fun.
But you'll be able to see like one of my games. I'll probably put it over here in between us or something so you can see it a little bigger or something. But it's just a fantastic, well-made game. It's perfect. It's just not. There's no story to it. There's no cutscenes. There's nothing at all. It's literally just a sports game, and it's fantastic for what it is. So I had to shout out Rocket League.
Very nice. It would be like shouting out Overwatch, but I've never played that one. I just really like the story.
Right.
I wanted to shout out Legend of Zelda. I played through Ocarina of Time personally and Wind Waker. I've gotten through a bit of Twilight Princess as well as Majora's Mask. I'm kind of like listing them out of order, and that's okay. I used to be way more into the community, but this was way back when I was a kid, so I've forgotten a lot of the aspects of those games. But when you were going through Prince of Persia and the sort of puzzle solving aspects of it, that's what it really reminded me of. Like, there's a lot of really cool puzzle solving, and the storyline usually isn't all that complicated, especially for those earlier games, but it's very satisfying towards the end. So I think that's probably something that's shared between those two. Smash Brothers.
Do you have a desire to get a Switch and play the newest Zelda?
We have a Switch and we have the newest Zelda. We just haven't gotten around to playing it.
I only ask because a lot of people consider that to be the best Zelda game and the one that like a lot of people consider that like their favorite game of all time.
Yeah, so. I've watched a lot of breakdowns of that game, and I think that there's definitely a cause with which to agree with that. I think that it's purely nostalgia that keeps me really like entertained by these older games, but the newest one I think is probably the best. Sure. If we're going by mechanics as well as storyline and like the way that things are told, even the soundtrack is incredible for the newest one. What's the newest one called again?
Breath of the Wild. I just literally thought of it right now.
Breath of the Wild. Thank you.
Played that.
I've only played a little bit of it. That's my husband.
I finished it.
For the viewers, yeah. I've watched him play. I was going to play. I will, I promise. I'm just going to move on, though, to Super Smash Brothers, which is just another really fun, wholesome experience. If, like, you just have a group of friends that just want to go nuts and, like, fight against each other. You can be Link versus Mario versus Peach versus Ganondorf, whatever. Like, Metroid and Fox, and it's just so much fun to... Yeah, you can be Ganondorf!
What's a Ganondorf?
Really Ganondorf is the antagonist from Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Okay.
And he comes back a lot. But, yeah. There is also, Undertale. Oh my god, Undertale. That one sort of came by surprise, I think in 2017, 18, I forget exactly. No, 2016, because this was way back when. But Undertale was one of those games that was very, very low budget graphics. It's unexpectedly extremely compelling storyline. And the way that it is compelling is because it's actually based around the idea that you are not supposed to kill anything within the game.
Oh, okay.
2016, thank you. 2015? Okay, I was wrong. It's 2015.
We were still dating at the time.
We were still dating at the time.
Well, that game came out on
Anyway.
PC way before it came out on consoles, I think. So the console date
Yes.
might have been 2017, 2018.
But either way, the idea of the story is that you drop into this world and you like really, if you show mercy to all of the enemies within the game, it enriches the world. And by the end of the game, like the fulfilling conclusion is if you show mercy to everyone within that world.
That's
so if you
awesome.
don't kill anyone and you stay at level 0 through the whole game, that is the most fulfilling conclusion. And also it has one of the coolest soundtracks I have heard in a very long time.
Do they tell you at the beginning of the game to not kill people, or is that something
They don't.
Oh, that's awesome.
You gotta figure it out, and it's the coolest thing. And the graphics are today we would consider it to be awful. Like it's like old pixelated graphics, but it all adds together in the end. The storyline is incredible. It's one of the best games I have seen in a long time. And you can even dive into the code and find little like Easter eggs for it, whole characters that you don't meet in the game. I digress though. Let's keep going. DDR and Guitar Hero are like both 2 in 1 for me because I loved them so much when I was growing up, and I found so many songs through DDR and Guitar Hero. They were so much fun for me. I was very good at them. Guitar Hero was one of the ones that like, oh my god, those are crazy.
The 2 games that Harmonix, the company that made all the Guitar Hero Rock Band games, made before they made those were these games, and they're fantastic.
That's fun.
Frequency and Amplitude.
Guitar Hero was one of those ones that if I beat a guy in it, he would get so upset. Like any dude, if I was going against a dude, would get so angry if I beat him. And the same thing goes for like Soul Calibur, like Dead or Alive. A lot of the player versus player, if I won in, people got very upset, and I just won anyway because I don't give a shit. But I loved playing Soul Calibur. It was another situation where, like you with Twisted Metal, I would follow the storyline of every single character. I would know their song. I would know why they're fighting someone. I would know how their story ended and how that connected to the next game. Like, I loved the games that furthered the story. I'm a huge fan of Soul Calibur because of that. And most people just know it because Ivy has a freaking ridiculous outfit on. And she does, by the way. She should not be wearing that. Her second outfit is way cooler. Like, she's got like this like really regal looking outfit rather than just being all hanging out. But
yeah, I don't know anything about Soul Calibur at all. So
it's famous for how they animate women, which is badly, by the way. Layers of Fear I put onto my shout out list because it was my first encounter with a horror thriller adventure game, and the concept behind it blew my mind. And I watched through, I did not play it. Same thing with Undertale. I can't play either of those games because Undertale was too hard. I'm not very good at bullet hell, which is basically like you try to dodge things on the screen. And then Layers of Fear is like a first person, not shooter, because you're just walking around. So first person horror game. And I couldn't sleep for days after I watched it. I couldn't stop watching it, but I had to watch it because like the storyline was so compelling, and as you picked up different pieces of this story, you start to understand why he's in this hellish household and why it's like melting around him and what he's done to earn it in certain ways, and like what the kind of like horrible person your protagonist is, and like the different clues behind everything and the reasons as to why these things are hunting after you, because like your wife is hunting you technically in a certain sense, and like there you have a child but you don't know what happened to the child, and there's these horrible dramatic nightmarish things that go on in the house. But that's basically, I think those are all the shout-outs that I've got.
So are you a fan of like horror stuff in general?
Yes, I would say yes. I like a handful of horror movies, and the horror games, like I really love horror games because they really do force you to question exactly the mechanics of the games.
Sure.
And it really puts you in that first person perspective and like forces you to think things through. So there are certain horror games that I like. When you're getting into the stupid like sort of gore porn kind of stuff, I'm not really into it. I love psychological thriller kind of things, which is my jam. I don't know. Are you into that kind of stuff at all? Or?
Well, that's a long conversation. In general, the aesthetic of horror, anything, whether it's a movie or anything, I love. love
Yeah.
the scary, creepy aesthetic.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of horror movies that I like truly love. There's a
Yeah.
lot that I do, but not. And then horror games, like, it's not a genre of game that I really play through very much. A lot of the ones that are the most revered are like first person ones now, like Resident Evil and everything is first person now, which is something
Those
I never...
I wouldn't even consider that horror though, because like
But
if
now
you have
they
a
are,
weapon, if you have a weapon, you can basically fight your way through. If you don't have a weapon and you are forced to like live within this world and try to get through, that for me is far scarier. That's far more horrifying than like Resident Evil feels like an action adventure with horror elements, you know?
I would agree with that, but that's just one aspect of horror. Like, I mean, Resident Evil is for sure a horror game. Like, I remember on my PS1 playing Silent Hill and thinking that that was probably the scariest game I've ever played because of one mechanic in the game. As you get closer to an enemy, you had a radio in your pocket and it would start to static. And so you'd hear radio static. And so that like, it like instills this fear in you when you hear the radio static. And that's something that's been done a lot in a lot of games, like an audio cue that's very common. But so have you ever played the Last of Us games? Because those are horror games, but they're so beyond any genre or anything.
I haven't played Last of Us.
Is there a reason? Is there a reason that you have? I mean, it seems to me like you do tend to stay away from like the giant mainstream games that everyone on Earth like waits and stands in line for.
This isn't on purpose, I promise you.
No, I didn't mean that as a negative thing. I just meant like it seems like those aren't the things that interest you. But like it's just, I don't know, there's just like certain games that like the Uncharted games or like The Last of Us or even stuff like GTA that I feel like everyone that's a gamer should like be forced to experience to just kind of know how that
I've
stuff
never
works.
experienced any of those, but
it's just crazy to me that like, especially because I know you, the little bit that I do know of you, like I just think that you would love The Last of Us. Like,
you're probably right. From what I hear about it, it's very good. A lot of people were very much into the new one that just came out.
it's beyond good. Like it's like Kurosawa, Alfred Hitchcock, like beyond the realm of what should be possible, both in storytelling and as a game. Like it's beyond, I mean, all the stuff I'm talking about, like Last of Us is like beyond all of that. And I'm not saying it's my favorite game ever. I don't think it's the greatest game ever, but like it just is. Like every aspect of it goes beyond what it should be possible in the medium. And like it just surpasses it. Like it's insane. I mean,
actually,
really
if we're going to talk about video games as a medium, I think that I would love... There's a lot of games here that we have listed, but like Detroit Become Human is one of them that I wanted to touch on for that. And I think that Last of Us is kind of along those lines as to where they push the boundaries of exactly what a video game means, you know? I will breeze through Detroit Become Human because giving away there's like literally so many different pathways for it that if I give away one thing, it'll have nothing to do with what the player ends up doing. I love Detroit Become Human. Well,
this is also only the only game that we both played, though,
hey,
as well. So I feel like that deserves being said.
I have so much fun with this game, but it's also, I should point out, it is one of the most tense experience I've ever had in games. This is not a story for the lighthearted. This is not a pick-me-up, let's go have fun and play Detroit Become Human. If you jump into this story, you're in for a wild ride, and you're also going to be filled with anxiety for hours. I spent most of this game worried that the characters would die at pretty much every moment. And if they, like, you get so attached to them that, like, literally if anything does happen to them, it's just so horrifying. But as you played through before, it's like basically just you go through and make choices for the characters, and those choices directly affect the storyline later. So like even how long you take to look at something will affect what happens later on in the story. So like the length of time that you take, the amount of clues that you gather at certain points, the decisions you make to save people, you're basically following three androids. One is like a detective or cop who is going after deviant robots or deviant androids, and those are ones that have basically just awakened in their consciousness. The second one is a model of android who is made for like housekeeping and child caring, and her name is Kara, and the first one's name is Connor, and the third one is Marcus, who's also made for basically caretaking, and he ends up being one of the ones where he ends up being like the starter of the revolution. That's Marcus's deal. Kara ends up trying to save a little girl, and she's just trying to get across the border. And Connor is going through trying to catch all of the deviants, and then he himself is going through an arc. But one of the things I want to mention is that their stories are fully crafted, the graphics are incredible, but what really got to me was the soundtrack, because it's done by 3 separate composers. So every single part of the story has its very, very specific like thumbprint. Like you can really hear the difference between every single part and how it evolves. But that's my basic Detroit spiel. I love it. It's got a huge community around it now. It's only gotten bigger since it came out, which is wild to me.
Yeah.
It's really big in Japan. It's just strange.
Okay.
What game did you want to go to? I skipped over. So
that's right. Let's talk about Assassin's Creed real quick, because I can do that one real quick. So, Assassin's Creed.
That one I love.
I think everybody knows. Here's all of the games. I think I have 9 of them here. I am ashamed to admit, when I was prepping for this video, I found out I had completely forgotten about Assassin's Creed Rogue, which is the game that they released at the same time as Assassin's Creed Unity. Because in 2013 when the PS4 came out, or no, it was 2014, the year after the PS3 came out, they released 2 games that same year. They released Assassin's Creed Rogue and Assassin's Creed Unity. And the Unity was only on the PS4, and Assassin's Creed Rogue was only on the PS3.
Oh, okay.
Right, which is so weird when you think about all the development time that went into that and everything. But
that's strange.
But anyway, the only reason I mention that is to say that I have played all of the Assassin's Creed games except that one, which I totally forgot existed until yesterday when I was prepping for this. But I love all the Assassin's Creed games. I have literally played all of them. I love them all. I think some of the most amazing moments I've ever had in a games are in these games. Have you played any of them, Grace? Or
I didn't, but I was working at GameStop when the Assassin's Creed that's in Italy came out. I just remember looking at the posters for Assassin's Creed constantly and how gorgeous the artwork was for it. Like the graphics for Assassin's Creed is always kind of like left me winded at how beautiful it is. Like the sheer
oh my gosh.
the visual of hopping off of the buildings and like the cool cloaks and whatnot. I totally get why people would be into these games, because they're really cool.
It's so funny. It's so awesome that you said that, because the first time I was ever playing a video game and I was just walking through the world and I had to stop and be like, I can't believe that this is what video games are.
It's gorgeous.
The first time that ever happened was in Assassin's Creed 3, which is one of my favorites, which is considered by most people one of the least favorites in the series, and that's the one that takes place in the United States during the Revolutionary War, when with the Native American protagonist Connor. But I just remember walking around in that game. Yeah, that's true. Well, his real name is unpronounceable to me. It's funny if you look it up online. There's a colon actually in his name. If you look it up online, it's pretty cool. His actual Native American name. But in that game, so cool. All the games are cool for their own reasons. But, but specifically the modern trilogy of games, which is Assassin's Creed Origins, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and then the one that's I'm currently playing through right now. I'm about 50 hours into Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Those 3 games,
people were jazzed about that one.
Yeah, all 3 of those games are like so special, and they're very different. This game I'm playing right now, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, is basically just The Witcher. Like it is so similar to The Witcher that it's actually like I can't believe that it was allowed to be this similar to The Witcher. But at the same time, it's still got the same tenets of the modern Assassin's Creeds. There's a bird that flies around that you can switch to at any point. You can shoot arrows and then control their direction in the air, which is really cool. But specifically, I just want to mention one thing about one of the games, because something we were talking about earlier, and this is in Assassin's Creed 2. So I am going to spoil the ending of Assassin's Creed 2 right now.
That's fine. Go ahead.
So the end of Assassin's Creed 2, I had this crazy experience. Everyone that plays the game has this experience, but basically in the game, the story of all the Assassin's Creed games is that you are a person in real life in the game. Like, you're a person in present day in the game who then goes into a machine to relive the memories of your ancestor, but you're controlling them. Okay, that's
so cool.
That's the story of Assassin's Creed for the most part. It deviates a little bit from either. In the second one, you are playing through the game, and you go through, and you get to the end of the game, and one of the cool things about Assassin's Creed, and one of the reasons I was going to bring it up as a soundtrack, is that kind of like you were saying with Detroit, there's two very disparate elements of Assassin's Creed. Yeah. Every Assassin's Creed game takes place during a specific important time in history, whether it's the French Revolution or the Egyptian periods or ancient Greece, whatever. So the scores for those games are all
incredible. I'm a fan of those scores too. They're really well done.
Yeah. They're all like half the score is the games are always done with two composers. Half the score is done by someone who does the period influenced music from whatever period they're in. Like Assassin's Creed Valhalla is all these like cool Viking chants and instruments of the time and all that stuff. But then the other half is the technological
hurdy-gurdy.
For sure, which I hate the hurdy-gurdy.
I love the hurdy-gurdy.
It buzzes. It's stupid. I hate that instrument. But anyway, I'm glad you even know what it is though. So that's great because most people don't. But anyway, the other half of the soundtrack is always this very cool electronic like granular synthesized things that have cool synths and things, and it's to sort of merge the aspect of the game that's the traditional like period piece stuff, and then also the much more synth. And I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there was John Paisano who did Kara, and then there's Nima, and I forget their last name, but they did Connors, and putting those two soundtracks side by side, completely different feeling, and it's so cool.
For sure, I love that aspect. I love it when projects do that kind of thing, and Assassin's Creed does that for all of their games, or at least the most recent ones for sure.
See, that gets me even more interested in it now.
But speaking of the technology aspect of it and stuff, so in the games, there's always this understanding that you are playing a person that the character in the game that you're playing is being controlled by, in most of the games, it's a character named Desmond Miles, who is hooked up to the Animus, which is the machine that allows you to relive your ancestors' memories.
Yeah.
But in the second game, you meet a character, I think her name is Juno, and the overarching story to Assassin's Creed, the ones that connect all the games, is very complicated. It has to do with all sorts of crazy, like, it's not like Metal Gear complicated, but it has to do with this ancient civilization that lived on Earth, like many years ago, and was like these crazy god creatures and stuff. But at the end of Assassin's Creed 2, I had one of the coolest video game moments I've ever had, where you kind of beat the game, and you go, this is where the spoilers come in, you beat the game, and the character, this like godlike creature who you've heard about the last two games, comes to you, and she's talking to the character that you are in Assassin's Creed 2, whose name is Ezio Auditore. She talks to Ezio, and then she says, now I'm going to talk to Desmond. And she talks to Desmond, who's the person who's in the Animus, who's
playing as his ancestor.
Right, and so she's talking to him, and you're like, holy crap, this is like Revelation. And then she stops, and she turns and looks at the camera, and she says, now I want to talk to the person controlling Desmond. And you're like, oh my God, she's talking to me! It is the most amazing fourth wall breaking thing I've ever seen. Like, it is so epic. It is so epic.
It feels really good when that happens. I don't know why.
It's really cool. You have no clue that it's happening. And then that's the moment in the games where you realize like there is more going on here than they're telling you. And then that carries over into all the games. Like there's always this more sort of like this overarching thing. And actually the one last thing I want to say about Assassin's Creed, other than how great it is in the combat and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed 3 is really special to me because it came out on my birthday, which is October 21st, 2013. And it was really cool or 2012, because if you remember, in November of 2012, the world was supposed to end, if you recall.
Oh, yeah. Haha.
Well, the game was tied into that and had been leading up to that for years, because at that point, that was Assassin's Creed 3. Yeah. It's Assassin's Creed 3, but it was actually the fifth game in the series. So the two previous games before that in the series had been talking about November 1st, 2012. And so when you go to the store and you buy the game on October 21st, which is my birthday, I took the day off work to go to the store, buy it, and play the game all day.
Yeah.
My birthday, October 21st, 2012. I buy the game. I put the disc in. It starts October 12th, 2012. So the game starts on the day you purchase the game.
On the day you purchase. That's so fun.
And you play the point of the game is supposed to be like Desmond in real life is trying to get to save the world before November 1st. I think it's November 1st. 2012. And so you have like 8 days, or you have 9 or 10 days or whatever to get to save basically the Earth. And it happens in real time, kind of. It's very awesome. It was such a cool experience.
That's really fun. That's a really cool experience for a game.
It was such a cool experience, and that's an aspect of the game that would mean literally nothing to someone outside of if you bought it on that day and then played it kind of like leading up to November 1st, which I definitely didn't beat it on November 1st. So like it didn't line up for me.
That would have been a lot, yeah.
But like that's a cool thing that happened that anyone that bought it after that, it wouldn't matter as much, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a cool example of how the people who make these games like think they think really hard about how to make all this stuff.
And that's like
cool.
something that I find it really isn't done a lot in other forms of media. So
for sure.
In video games, you really can push that boundary.
And it's fun that this happens in Assassin's Creed, which is considered one of the most like mainstream games.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one comes out. It's yearly for the most part. The last 3 have been every other year, and that's why they've been so strong. But for the most part, it was yearly. It was considered one of those games that Ubisoft, the game that produces it, just kind of squirts out every year. But the amount of care that went into them,
time, then.
The amount of care that goes into them, you can really tell.
Yes, and speaking of games taking about forever, how about Kingdom Hearts, huh?
That's, come on, that's just Square Enix in general. I mean, let's be honest.
I mean, yeah, because the next 2 games for me are going to be Square Enix, so they take their sweet old time, and they just love to tease an audience along the way.
For 10
I just
years.
think that they're ridiculously bad at timing their like teasing in a sense, but I digress. Kingdom Hearts was supposed to be one game that came out as a joint partnership between Square Enix, or Squaresoft at the time, and Disney. And they made one game about a boy named Sora that... Oh, and I've got it too. They made one game about a boy named Sora that's basically fighting to save his friends. And I've got like all of these crazy remastered covers.
Yeah, I've got a remastered one here too. But
hell yeah. But
I'm really excited. Let's take our time on this one, because I'm excited to talk about this with you, because we both played, for the most part, most of them. Because when you hear my Kingdom Hearts experience, you're gonna probably be mad at me.
Oh no. Anyway, I was very much in love with the first game. I used to make fun of it because I thought the concept was stupid, but once you actually sit down and play it, the gameplay is so kind of fun and infectious.
And it's very deep. It's very deep.
It gets deep quick.
Yeah.
And the storyline is just, for the first game, and I would say for the entire series, even though things go wild, is just kind of out of this world, and it touches on things that you're not quite expecting, like what you're willing to do to protect the people that you love, or how much you're willing to sacrifice to go the distance to save them, like things like that I think really push the boundaries of like what I was prepared to put into the game at first. And
sure. 100%.
It's so much fun to play, too. Like, the fighting system, this is one that I could literally tell anyone to play, because, like, I don't have to tell you, oh, the card system for fighting is kind of weird, but you'll get through it. No, the fighting system, you can literally jump right in and just start hitting things.
Yep, just hack and slash.
It is so much fun. But I fell in love with it pretty hard. This was one of those fandoms that I actually really got into, where I was cosplaying it, then I met other people that cosplayed it, and then I met other people aside from those people that were cosplaying, and I still go and visit those people who do that down in Florida whenever we're in the area.
What characters did you cosplay as?
I cosplayed as Vexen. Or Evan, whichever one I wanted to make the props for. I have the giant shield just in the other room. I could probably go and grab it if we really wanted to. And then my husband Nick, he used to be Lexaeus, who's a character that like nobody knows about, but he's so good.
That's who he is.
He's so great though.
Who cares?
Like, I know. It's just because they won't give him lines anymore.
Nope.
Because they don't want to pay the voice actor, most likely. Anyway, I digress. throughout all of the games, like there's these individuals who are kind of like pulling the strings behind the scenes, and like the games go on for like Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, Kingdom Hearts, all these like side games that like all that like no one else really played, but then like once you realize that you have to play them, then people go back and play them because they'll start up on like Kingdom Hearts 2 and realize they don't know who the hell Roxas is.
Right.
So things jump around, characters get introduced, people get formed out of like the other things happening to other people, like someone losing their heart and then another individual is created from it. So things get deep. A lot of characters end up forming relationships with other characters, and like this whole theme of three friends being together the whole time just goes kind of across the board.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite parts of it, I think.
It's hard to explain because of this, but just like to explain the fact that it's very heartfelt to see these friendships and how much they support each other even after they make mistakes or fall apart is just so important to me, because there's characters that do really crappy things and like they attack you and it's very upsetting to you because you love these characters, but like to know that Sora or whoever the protagonist is at the time has the ability to like go back and forgive them is such a huge thing that you don't really see a lot in modern media, I would say.
It's funny, but one thing we should say for people who are not familiar with Kingdom Hearts, this is the game that's Final Fantasy and Disney characters put together.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what we're talking about at all, this is the one where Goofy and Donald are with the crazy anime-looking character and they go on adventures. So
it's fun. You guys will like it.
Oh, it really is. My experience with Kingdom Hearts is going to make you mad at me.
Oh, no.
I played the first game and I really enjoyed it. And then this is on PS2. And then I played the second game. I got it when it came out. I played the second game and I got to the last boss in the game, which there's like multiple stages to the last boss.
Yeah.
But I got to the last boss and I didn't have the ability that I needed to like beat him for whatever reason. Like and so I've never played another Kingdom Hearts game since. And I never passed that one. I never beat 2. I never beat 2, and then here's this. So then I bought it on PS3, wherever it's over here somewhere. I bought the PS3 version, and I started playing. I was like, okay, this is it. I'll go back and I'll play him again. And so I started the first one, and I started it, and I started playing it, and I didn't realize that in the PS3 version, it's the actual Japanese versions of the games, meaning that the normal difficulty, which is what I usually play games on, is actually the hard difficulty, and the hard difficulty is actually the extreme difficulty.
Oh my God.
And so I played it on normal difficulty, which is actually hard, which means, I played video games for 30 years, and I'm pretty good at some of them. On PS3, I could not pass the first Kingdom Hearts game. I didn't realize that you're supposed to turn it to easy, which is actually the old medium. So I started on medium, which was the old hard.
Yeah.
And I couldn't beat Kingdom Hearts 1 on PS3. So to this day, those are the only 2 games that I've ever attempted to play that they were too difficult for me to pass. And when I say difficult, I mean like I could not beat the bad guys at the ends.
No, I believe it. This is because like I usually set things to easy because I don't have time to be messing around with super difficult bosses anymore.
Sure, and
like,
I agree with that.
Yeah. It's like it's just very difficult to put down that time. But at the same time, sometimes those bosses in Kingdom Hearts are extremely challenging. Sometimes they're very easy. Like sometimes you breeze through and it's fine.
Yeah.
But like unexpectedly, I don't know why JRPGs do this. Tales of does this all the time, where you randomly come up against a boss that's just like ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
and I just want to say, like, because I've played a lot of video games, and I'm not saying I'm the greatest video gamer of the all time, but like I'm pretty dang good, and like I could not. And then the thing is, like, I was not going to go back and restart 2, to get there. So, like, to this day, I've never played any of the other ones. I didn't play 3. I don't know nothing about it.
It's understandable.
It's just disappointing,
I liked 3 a lot. I won't say it's the best one of the series. If I was going to choose a best one, from the sound, I didn't actually play through this one, so I actually really need to. Birth by Sleep is cited as one of the best ones in the series. I think that just in terms of storytelling, you'd probably like it the best. It has like a kind of weird feeling to it because you kind of know what's going to happen to these characters by the end. But
See, I just was always like because I didn't get too deep into any of the other, like all I cared about really was Sora and Kairi and whatever the other guy's name, Riku, like because they're like the core of the first game. And then in the second game, that's when
such a great arc too.
That's when you get into like, well, see, and I don't know what his arc is. All I know is that he's the jerk, basically. And then in the the thing that was really frustrating to me playing through it is like the whole time I just wanted Sora and Kairi just seemed like they fit together so well. And like in my journey of Kingdom Hearts never got to a point where that ever happened. And I was just like, man, this is so frustrating. And then I just totally gave up on it. Like I
don't want to give anything away for you, so I'm not going to say anything.
I might eventually play 3 eventually.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not going to finish 2 first, but
2 is so much fun.
Maybe.
2 is so much fun if it's on easy. I will say that.
Well, if I ever play any of these games again, I will definitely 100% do that. And I also hated the gummy missions in 1. I thought they were
they were awful.
bad.
I hated gummy as well. I don't know how people liked the gummy missions. Yeah. Also, one of the worst games in the series had some of the best characters. And that's how I got to Vexen, because Vexen is in Chain of Memories, and he's like your basic mad scientist character. It ends up that like he literally is one of the most important members of the organization, and he dies first in that game. It's so ridiculous. I love Vexen. I love his voice actor. I was actually on a podcast for a short time about Kingdom Hearts 2. Not 2, but Kingdom Hearts as well. Yeah. And I was very much in love with the Kingdom Hearts series. I love discussing the characters. I love discussing the Organization 13. Like, if that makes any sense.
Do you think you would have as much love for it if you had no reference to Final Fantasy at all?
Honestly, the Final Fantasy characters are so far off from like how they are in their games. Yes, I would say yes. Because the strongest characters in the Kingdom Hearts series are the ones created for that series. Okay. And I will die on that hill. I don't think that the Final Fantasy characters are very strong in it because there's no real point for them aside from being in one singular world that you like one or two singular a few worlds that you see them in. Sure. Where like it's, oh god, look, it's Cloud Strife. That's so interesting for all of 10 minutes that you're here. Like he doesn't really matter all that much. Okay. He's basically a shout out to fans.
As a person that didn't play through all of Kingdom Hearts and has never played a Final Fantasy game like that, I just was curious how that impacts.
Yeah. Like, I will go wild over seeing Riku or Ventus or Terra or, like, anyone else on the screen. If you put a Final Fantasy character up, I'm like, oh, well, they look pretty. I'm glad their costume has changed. Like, they don't really matter all that much. And they don't push the story forward. So.
And also, can we just take a minute to appreciate how it's so shocking. Like the Disney of today would never allow this.
They wouldn't. They wouldn't.
Never.
And the rumor about this was that Nomura had a conversation with a Disney executive in an elevator. So it was a literal elevator pitch. They were caught in an elevator together going to like the top floor somewhere at some convention. He was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we did a story together? I had this one idea about this one thing. And he explained it quick. And then they went their separate ways. And then they contacted later. Like they organized this later after that.
That's so cool.
I know, right? That's so amazing. Ah, man. For sure. Oh, also, the music by Yoko Shimomura is really, really great for Kingdom Hearts. And Hikari Utada, this is another thing that connects over to Metal Gear Solid. She does the main themes, and like they're actually both in Japanese and English, and that really reminded me of something from Metal Gear, because that was something that you cited there.
For sure. Since you mentioned soundtracks, do you want to go through our soundtrack shoutouts real quick?
Sure, I'll do mine real quick. The main ones that I had wanted to say were pretty much every single Supergiant game, and that is Pyre, Bastion, Hades, and Transistor. Not in that order, they came out in a separate order, but all of those games are mapped to the soundtrack, not vice versa. So the soundtrack is an extremely important element. Maybe it was
the Bastion soundtrack. The Bastion soundtrack is like some of the coolest Old West electronic music that's ever been written.
It's wild. It's so good. I listen to it constantly. It's if I want soundtrack music that sounds like the old wild, it's Where the Water Tastes Like Wine and Bastion. Both of those
I don't even know Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, but I'll have to listen to that now.
The game itself, I didn't find the gameplay to be as compelling, but the soundtrack is so amazing. It's so good.
I'll have to remember that. You'll have to message me that because I need to look into that.
Mm-hmm. But other than that, Octopath Traveler, Skyrim, and Witcher are 3 soundtracks that I find very, very fulfilling when it comes to like looking for fantasy music. Witcher and Skyrim are both like very similar in nature in my mind for that reason. Octopath sounds very much like a JRPG, but like you can literally put it to almost like any seat in your brain. It's so good. Yeah,
the Witcher soundtrack is. We'll talk about that in a little while when I talk about The Witcher. We can bring
I
that
would
up
love
again.
to hear your view on it because I love the Witcher soundtrack.
Was that all your soundtracks you wanted to shout out?
Yeah, those are all the ones that I had.
Okay, so the ones that I had written down were, we already talked about Assassin's Creed and what makes that cool with the 2 different composers.
So I'm going to have to look that up again.
And then Metal Gear and Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal is the more heavy stuff, so if you're not into like heavy music. Metal Gear, I definitely think you should look up the soundtracks for that. It's probably really weird. Like, you'd listen to it and be like, what the heck? But if you experience the game, you'd get it.
Yeah.
But then I also have to mention, I think the greatest video game soundtrack of all time, the greatest video game series of all time, the greatest video game composer of all time is Akira Yamaoka, who did all of the music for the Silent Hill games.
Oh my god, I love those ones!
Yeah, I only have one little CD of that, but I have to show this because this little CD that I bought at Target in the checkout line is worth like $150 now.
Can I just say, I love horror game soundtracks. I don't know why, I just really love them.
The Akira Yamaoka's Silent Hill soundtracks is the greatest trip-hop music that has ever been created. If you enjoy trip-hop music, which most people don't really care, trip-hop music is making a bit of a comeback now, but people don't know that that's what it is.
What's trip-hop music?
Basically, it's like, do you know who Portishead is? Portishead? No? Well,
sorry.
Well, congratulations. You have like 2 of the greatest albums that have ever been released that you can go experience now for the first time, and it'll blow your mind. But basically what trip hop music is, it's like hip hop samples, but with like luscious, beautiful female vocals over the top of it. But it all has, or all the stuff that I like in the genre at least, has kind of like a sinister feel to it. Like the samples are all like lo-fi and they're all like dirty sounding, but then the vocals that lay over top are very like, not necessarily clean. They can be a little bit gritty and stuff too, but they're very lush, very slow paced. Like Portishead is the best. Portishead is the best example of trip hop music. Portishead's album Dummy, which came out in 1992, I think, which is insane for how fantastic the sound quality is and how great it is all through. Anyone watching this, please just stop watching this and go listen to any Portishead.
Okay, but
honestly, like it's close to almost being worth it for that because Portishead is so great. But they only ever released 3 albums, and the 3rd album is a giant turd, so don't listen to that one. But their first 2 albums are fantastic. Anyway,
I'll have to look them up.
Akira Yamaoka and the Silent Hill soundtracks, trip hop music, greatest trip hop music. It's fantastic. It's scary. It's great. It's got a beat. It's amazing. I also have to shout out my favorite individual game soundtrack is the soundtrack to the Little Big Planet 1. I think it's some of the most clever music that's ever been written. There's 2 aspects to it. There's the soundtrack aspect, which is games that music they found from outside of the game and put it in the game. And then the score to the game, which I think is just as good, which that's rare to have the score of a game be as good as the soundtrack. But the score of the game was all done by the Daniel Pemberton Orchestra, who is like one of my favorite scoring guys out there. He's done a lot of music to movies that you would know, definitely 100%. I'll let you look that up on your own time if you want. But then Daniel Pemberton Orchestra and the soundtrack and score for Little Big Planet 1, you can listen to it at any time of the day and it will just make you feel good in your soul. Okay, so now I'll talk about The Witcher. My experience with this game was incredible. I have the first pop vinyl figure I ever got is a Little Witcher one.
Nice.
It's Geralt versus, and I wouldn't have gotten this if it was normally. I'm not a fan of pop vinyls really at all. But if it's something that I really care about, like Twisted Metal, there's only ever been like 10 examples of anything that you could ever purchase. There's been Witcher stuff has been so popular the last couple of years, which I'm grateful for because it gives me a chance to experience it more. But this one in particular I love because this creature he's facing is a Leshen, or in the show a Leshy, or in the books it's called a leshy, but in the video game it's called a leshen, and it's the most terrifying creature I've ever faced in any video game without question.
I mean, it's even the cute version ain't looking too happy there,
yeah.
So
And so I just have the game on PS3, PS4. I never played the first two games at all because they were on Xbox only. The first game never came out on consoles, and then the Witcher 2 came out on Xbox 360, I believe. And then this was the first Witcher game that was going to be available for people on PlayStation. And I saw it when it was debuted at like a E3 or something, which that's an aspect of gaming that we haven't talked about and we're not going to because we don't have time. But the idea that the gaming community have these like they used to have these big tentpole events where all gamers could come together and watch like live E3 and stuff like that to get these trailers and huge reactions. Like I will legit cry watching some of these like trailer reactions and stuff to people in like auditoriums. So anyway, that's how I saw the Witcher trailer for the first time, like back in 2015 or whenever they first announced it. And I was like, this game looks really cool. It looks like Lord of the Rings. It looks like it's high fantasy. And I've always wanted like an open world game like that because I never played Skyrim because it's first person. So I never had experience.
Same deal.
I never had, even though you can play it in third person, but get out of here if you want to do that. We all know the game's broken if you play it in third person.
I don't know. I just know the music's good.
Right. But anyway, I was looking forward to this big open world high fantasy experience. And what I got is a masterpiece. Like, this game is in every way possible a masterpiece. The acting is fantastic. The storytelling is the best I've ever experienced in a video game. It's incredible. Every piece of discarded paper that has writing on it has meaning, and it's there for a reason. Every single bush and plant and tree that was put in the world was put there by someone's hand. The whole world feels crafted. And before this game, video games did not, in some instances it did, but for the most part, before Witcher, games did not feel that way. And since The Witcher came out, all those PlayStation games I was talking about, God of War, Horizon, all the Assassin's Creeds that have come out since then, Ghost of Tsushima, every one of those games has definitely taken influence from this game. This game influenced the direction that games will go in for the next decade. That's how important this game is. And so, from a storytelling standpoint, it's incredible. From a gameplay standpoint, it's incredible. The magic system is great. As I said earlier in the video, this is like, I think what might be my first real like RPG experience. Even though I know it's not a true RPG, this was probably the first game I'd ever played that had like a deep crafting system in it. It just was incredible. The magic system is something that you upgrade. It was the first game I'd ever played where you have dialogue choices. Or at least for the most part, that was like that in depth, because that's the whole fundamental aspect of the game is dialogue choices. And like they put a little indicator next to the dialogue choice that will move the conversation on, but then there's additional dialogue options you can have if you want to learn more. I clicked on every single dialogue option in this game.
Aren't they fun? I love learning other things.
I learned everything I could about everything in this game, and it just is so fantastic, every aspect of it. The game made me cry multiple times playing through it, which video games don't do that all the time. I'm a pretty big sucker, but like...
I definitely am.
But like this game got me in multiple times. And the cool thing about all that to me was I had no reference for the story. Like, it was The Witcher 3. It's the third game in the series. Now, since then, I've done more research. I know more about it. And this game inspired me to buy these, which are the books. But I only have the first 4, and so I have 4 more that I need to read, plus the second compendium of the short stories. But the first Witcher book, though, the Last Wish, which I recommend this book to anybody. Literally anybody, whether you like The Witcher or not. This is the only compendium of short stories that I have, so maybe all short stories are this good, but I doubt it. The short stories in here, every story is just a mission from the game, basically. It's just like a mission from a game, I should say. It's not missions from the game exactly. But like the way it's written is so great. It's just like a side mission. And the side missions in The Witcher are one of the things the game is known for the most. It because it was one of the first games to treat side missions and the content of side missions and side stories with the same love and care that they treated the main story and the main missions in the game. So you can walk, your character is Geralt. For people who are unfamiliar with The Witcher, you're a guy who's a Witcher named Geralt, whose basic job is to slay monsters. And it's taking place in the time when Witchers are basically no longer a thing. And so a lot of people in the world don't even believe that Witchers exist anymore. And so but one example of a small side mission, just for example, is you walk into a town, and every town you walk into, the mechanic in the game is you go to they have like a board in the middle of the town, that's their like message board, and you get all the contracts from it. So you get a contract, and one of the contracts says, something has been attacking my rabbits in my garden on the northern side of the town. Come help me figure it out. So you walk over there, you talk to the person. Yeah, it's something taking the rabbits. And so you go investigate the garden, and you look and you see some tracks in the ground, and you follow the tracks to the trees. And in the trees, there's a thing hanging from the tree. It's a note. Okay. It tells you someone died or something. You go through the trees and you find this little abandoned place, and there's a well. And then in the well, there's a spirit of a lady. And then you have to decide what to do. Do you want to wait till midnight when the spirit comes out and fight it? Do you want to try to set traps for the spirit? Do you want to go back to the village and get help? Like, how do you want to do this? And so and then what you end up finding is the story of the woman in the well. Why is she in the well? Why is there spirit in the well? What happened to her to make her unrestful in life, and then in death, like why is there still, and it all has meaning, and it all has this depth to it that really gives everything the sense of it. The world is real. Like the world in the game is real. Every person that's there has a function, and it is just incredible. And all the games that I love, that I like, Red Dead Redemption, which I'm going to talk about later, like those games all have that in it. But The Witcher is one of the games that does that the best, and it's just fantastic. The books are great. The TV show on Netflix is amazing.
It is very, very fun.
You were talking about the soundtrack to the game.
Soundtrack is incredible. Oh my god.
I do enjoy the soundtrack. However, I do find the female vocals in it to be annoying after like an hour 140. Because you walk up to...
You don't like people chanting all that stuff at you
just going,
for like 19...
No, I don't want that. No.
Are you kidding? That's my constant soundtrack everywhere I go in my brain. Just walking about my life, working on the computer.
Oh, that's funny. Mine is much more of a... That's my life soundtrack. But actually my life soundtrack would just be something going wah wah. But anyway, like the soundtrack in it is really great. One thing I have to mention about the soundtrack from the game, which one cool thing about the CD Projekt Red is my favorite developer of all time. Although I don't know, but in this game, this is a great example of how cool this game is. So I bought this at the store. I open it up. What's the first thing you see in here? The actual CD soundtrack is in here.
Nice.
And then there's this piece of paper. And I'm going to read it to you. It says, "Dear Gamer, first of all, we would like to thank you for your support. We really appreciate that you have decided to spend your hard-earned money on our game, and we hope that you have a fun time playing it. Over 200 of us have spent the last 3 years working on The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and it is with great pleasure and humility that we present our game to you." He said, then it says, "At CD Projekt Red, we believe that when you buy our games, you're entitled to continuous free support, updates, patches, and bits of new and amazing content. We owe that to you, blah, blah, blah," basically. So basically what it was saying was, now this was this was in 2017 when the video games industry was like milking everyone for microtransactions.
Yeah. Screwing everyone over for DLC.
This piece of paper is in here so that they could tell you everything we're going to release from here on out, except the 2 big expansions, is free. And they did. They put out all sorts of cool free stuff. And one of the absolute coolest... I had planned to eventually go and talk about like the story of The Witcher a little bit, but I'm not going to do that because we want to do a little faster.
There's a lot of it.
There is.
Witcher is incredible. It does have a cool story.
Right. And one of the things I didn't want to get too into is because like just telling you the character... This game takes place many years after the events that are going to be in the show. And so just even saying like, oh, my favorite character in this game is such and such could potentially spoil for someone who's still alive in the game after the show. Because I really do believe in the show, if they follow the books, even though I haven't finished the books, like part of the suspense of the show is going to be if certain characters live or die by the end of it. Mm-hmm. And if I told you the characters that are in here that take place after that, you would know that they don't die, which could be suspense. The suspense of the show could be ruined.
Yeah.
So I don't want to talk about that. However, what I do want to talk about just very briefly is the two expansions for this game. They are the only two pieces of DLC I've ever purchased. I've never bought DLC for any game. I don't, it's not that I refuse to, but like I don't generally feel the need to. But the two pieces of DLC for this game, Hearts of Stone, which is incredible. It has to do with the devil in this world, and Geralt kind of having a little bit of a battle back and forth, and Geralt basically one-upping the devil. It's great. It's such a cool, lighthearted story. I know I say devil, but like it's actually like really lighthearted. And there's this cool mission in the game where you have to go to this like ball with this girl, with one of the ladies in the game. And not one of the two main ladies, because hashtag Yennefer is bae. But anyway, you have to go to this cool ball with her, and there's all these cool little things to do in this like festival thing. And it's like one of the funnest missions I've ever done in a game. It's awesome. But the other expansion pass, which is The Witcher Blood and Wine, is what it's called.
Oh, I love the soundtrack for that one. But yeah.
Blood and Wine in itself is better than this game. Everything that I've just said about this, Blood and Wine is better than this.
Wow.
Now believe that if you can. Yes, because it's exactly the same thing in a new, it adds a whole new country basically to the continent. And the whole thing has to deal with fairy tales that we're all familiar with, like Goldilocks and Rapunzel and the little matchstick girl and all these different things. And at one point in the game, you do one of the coolest things I've ever done in a video game. You go into a storybook. So like you magically get transported into this ancient storybook, and it's just, the world is like nothing else in the rest of the game. It's bright colors. There's all these like castles in the distance, and there's all these cool things that all have to do with fairy tales, and it's just awesome. It's so gratifying. It's so fun. There are gameplay mechanics in that world that don't exist in the rest of it. Your horse is a unicorn that has like rainbows trailing from it. Like it sounds ridiculous.
That's so cool.
It sounds ridiculous, but like it's so cool. You get to fight the big bad wolf dressed in Granny's clothing. Like you get to do a lot of really cool stuff. And then on top of that, there's all the cool political intrigue of the actual overarching story. There's the vampire story that's in there as well. There's all sorts of really cool stuff. And so The Witcher is my second favorite game of all time, and it's there for a reason.
Very nice. I love the Final Fantasy series, and I think that the resurgence of love for them recently for Final Fantasy VII has really, really sort of reawakened that within me.
Oh, cool.
So it's been so much fun, actually. Like, and I think the market has seen that because they've resold Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy blah, 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 blah. And those are the only ones that I'm going to talk about, and I'm not going to talk about at length because, yet again, JRPGs, the stories are going to go buck wild at a certain point. The ones that I've definitely played through, though, are 7 and 8. When it comes to 9, I got about, like, midway through, and I didn't actually finish it. 10, I needed help from a friend in order to get to the end of that one. But the storylines for all of those are incredible and weird and strange, and they all have the same kind of elements where, like, you have these characters that you really get attached to. And it's yet again, it's the story and the characters that will carry you through, because the fighting system is nothing special. Like, it pretty much is the same thing over and over again. And that's kind of what Square Enix is known for in this circumstance. Final Fantasy VII, a lot of people are playing it now, but you're basically playing as Cloud Strife, and he is part of an organization that are basically a group of ego-terrorists. And they're trying to save the world by stopping this place called Shinra Company from, like, sucking it dry of energy. And you get Cloud, and you get, like, Tifa and Aerith, who are both very interesting characters within their own right. And I think that actually the new game really helped to build them out. I would say the same with Barrett. And it's really incredible what they've done with the graphics. But I personally am so used to the old ones. It's wild to see them be redone in the way that they have been. You get Final Fantasy VIII, which is you're following Squall Lionheart or Leonheart. I kind of forget how to say his name. I think it's Leonheart, actually, because he calls himself Leon in Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, okay. Sure. I was going to say, I thought there was a Leon in Kingdom Hearts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that guy. I don't know why they renamed him. His name was Squall, though. But he's basically a student at this place called Balam Garden, which is a school. And they have a bunch of students that they call Seeds, who are like basically special ops that go in and help defend territories. And the other garden, the other school, is attacking another town, or like they are like helping to attack this other town, and that's your first mission as Squall. And yet again, there's like a whole host of characters that you work with to try to save the area, and things go crazy from there. It's your basic turn-based system. For Final Fantasy VIII, you get these really cool summons. I feel like 7 and 8 really pump up the volume when it comes to like the attacks that you can do, the summons that you can use, because they always look so impressive. And the running joke.
A summon is just when you call like some other creature outside of your party to help you, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And 10 actually really centers a lot on summons. 8 does a little bit of work on it. I didn't quite get to them in 9, but They're basically like their whole cinematic graphics for like summoning forth these creatures that help you out. And I really loved watching them, but the running joke was like you can go and get a sandwich before the time that the summon would be over. And they actually did the damage. It just took forever to get through. In 10, they took a really interesting aspect of the world with summons, and they made it into like a full class of person that could make summons and actually use them in battle. But like this certain class, this is a huge spoiler, but this certain class of person was so rare and they had to be sacrificed by the end of the game. And it's like a wild storyline yet again. Sacrificing someone for the good of many is kind of a theme that runs throughout a lot of different JRPGs. And, like, the choices that you make leading up to that, or that your protagonist makes. But, Final Fantasy VII in particular was so formative for me, and I definitely have rose-tinted glasses when I look at that game, because I think it's a wonderful game, but I don't think it's the best game in the world. Mm-hmm. And I could see why people would go back now and be like, God, I can't even play through the first level of this because the graphics are so bad. Mm-hmm. And the like, I don't understand why people love this so much. Definitely understandable, because I think that... What was up? Well, I was going to say, but that's one of the reasons it's so nice that they remade it, right? I mean... Yeah.
It really does bring it to a new audience.
Exactly. Like, I would think about playing it now, because it's not turn-based anymore, which means I think I could get through it. And, I mean, I know a lot of people who played the new game, and it was so interesting to them, they wanted to go back and play the original, and that's kind of a cool idea, too. So it's like... as a person who's not into Final Fantasy, but like obviously I'm aware of its legacy and it's been around since I've been around. So it's like it's kind of cool to know that. And then also the idea, like I've heard some of the things that they did in this new game to make it a little different from the original game, and the ways that they're kind of doing things to make it kind of seem plausible that things could be different. Yeah. And then what they go forward with, like, are you expecting them to get to a point where it's just like no longer Final Fantasy VII anymore and it's like totally different?
I honestly, like, I'm just along for the ride. This is what I think when it comes to variations on an old story. We will always have the old story. Like, no one has to be worried that, like, oh no, we're gonna lose everything that we once played through as children. No, that game is still there. I feel like if they make changes
unless you
to
read
this
Cursed
game,
Child and they go back in time and ruin their books for you.
Cursed Child doesn't exist. What are you talking about?
I know. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
But I feel like if they make changes to it, I'm completely fine with it. There's always the old game to go back to and enjoy. And like, I don't have it, as you have seen and noticed, I have no problem with going back with like old graphics and enjoying old games. And actually, I think this one might be the oldest game on the list. I think this one came out in 97. Whereas I think that Dragoon came out in 99 or something, 98 or 99.
It's just kind of fun because, like, if it were me, and like if someone took like a Twisted Metal, for example, and they remade Twisted Metal, but they totally changed it and made it into something that looked like it was getting popular and was going to be having sequels, I I mean, I would be conflicted because part of me would be like, oh, the thing that I love so much is not what's being represented anymore. So these people are liking something that's not truly judgmental. But at the same time, I'd be like super excited to see what's coming next. And like really, especially if they were treating it with care, which I know they're definitely treating Final Fantasy VII with care.
Yeah.
I'd be really excited to see what's coming next and like looking forward to it a lot.
And like honestly, talking about misogyny in games, Tifa and Aerith were not as even halfway as well developed in the old games as they are in the newer one. They really did a lot of homework and a lot of legwork to try to make every character well-rounded. Even Jessie was like a throwaway character in the first version of Final Fantasy VII, and she is so likable and sweet and fun and great in the new one. Like I had so much fun meeting these new characters over again. And that's even just aside from the ones that I felt were underdeveloped. Even the ones that were developed have gotten like a whole new spin. So I really have no problems with it. At first, I was a little bit upset because I work well under a turn-based system, and I was like, they're gonna change it, and I'm not gonna be able to beat it anymore. But like, I feel like they did a really good job with it. I had a lot of fun. Nick had a lot of fun, and he hates turn-based systems a lot like you do. So like, I think that it speaks to a new audience, and I think that it's really amazing.
Well, I think for most people, from everything I've ever heard, like the core of why so many people liked Final Fantasy VII was the story. Like people love the story so much.
Yeah.
And the fact that I don't really know anything about it at all, and that I could experience the story now, like with this new version of it, or at least like to me, I don't know. I mean, if I have it on PlayStation Plus ever and it's free, I might do it. But I mean, I think I could go buy it now probably for like $20 or whatever. Maybe not $20 yet, but
the story is it's probably gonna follow like roughly the same story. It looks like they're setting it up for the same story. But if I could go on to 8 for a second, 8's soundtrack, I would argue, is the best soundtrack out of all of the Final Fantasy soundtracks. And like, people will disagree with me, and that's fine, but I felt like this was an incredible work by Nobu Uematsu is his name. And he actually has his own company now. But he like outdid himself for how incredible, like the battle themes, the map themes, the town themes were just like so good. Every single one was just a banger, and I loved it. But
it's awesome.
A lot of people love 9 because 9 harkens back to a lot of the early Final Fantasies. So, like, that's actually where you see the Black Mage artwork with, like, the little tiny, like, eyes and the huge hat and this big old coat. Like, it's a very iconic look for a Black Mage, and that, like, is a huge character thing in Final Fantasy 9. But 9, I don't know much about the storyline. I do know that the artwork is some of the best I've seen. 10 is the one with the leap in graphics that got like a whole new generation of people to get interested in Final Fantasy. And that was actually the one that I made a lot of friends over. Like when I was in high school little Grace having trouble making friends, like that one I bonded with, that one in Kingdom Hearts I bonded with people over. So that one has a special place in my heart, and it's a nice game. Tell me about Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption,
my favorite game of all time, Red Dead Redemption 2. Here, I got a keychain of it. There's not a ton of Red Dead Redemption swag. That's the first one, Red Dead Revolver. It's not connected in any way to the other two games.
This game made a splash. People love this game.
Well, a lot of people hate the game.
What?
A lot of people hate Red Dead Redemption 2.
I know nothing about Red Dead, so...
Yeah. Well, this is where Red Dead Redemption 1 came out in 2010. On PS3, and then that same year they released the expansion Undead Nightmare, which is the whole world, all the characters and everything with a brand new story. It's just there's zombies everywhere, which is what this is. It's a full game.
Zombies were a thing.
It's a full game, and it's amazing. It's just as good as the regular game. You go to all the same locations. It's a full 100% full game. 60 hours or so you could probably put into this. It's awesome. Wow. There's new mechanics. It's great. And a lot of people kind of really dismiss that when they talk about Red Dead, but if you're a fan of Red Dead, you're familiar with the Undead Nightmare series, and you're a little disappointed they're not doing anything like that with Red Dead 2. But the video game world has moved on since that, and Rockstar is no longer doing. Rockstar is only supporting the games with online world and online multiplayer stuff, which is what they've been doing with GTA since 2013 when it came out. the GTA Online. Which is why I'm a little bit sad that to think that this is potentially the last single-player Rockstar game is a huge disappointment to me, if that's the case. Now, this game sold 35 million copies or whatever on opening weekend, broke a bunch of records, all that stuff. Everyone, like you said, it was a big splash because it happened, at the right time. It was a big splash. A lot of people went and got it. Even people who never played the first game went and got it and tried to play it. But like I was saying, a lot of people had negative reviews to it because it was not what people wanted it to be. People wanted it to be Grand Theft Auto in the Old West, and that is not what Red Dead Redemption is. Red Dead Redemption is definitely its own thing. And it's crafted with, I was talking with The Witcher earlier, it's crafted with that same level of care. Every tree is put in exactly where it's supposed to be. Every rock and every babbling brook is put there by a hand. The whole world feels sculpted and intentional. And the great thing about Red Dead Redemption is the story. 100%. It is all about the story. The gameplay is amazing.
And I know nothing about the story.
Right.
So.
The gameplay is totally amazing, and the gameplay is what turned a lot of people off of Red Dead Redemption 2 because it is such a slow and intentional game. The game is it's like it was made for me. Like if we talked a little bit more about the different things we like and dislike about all the games, one of the things I would have told you is that in open world games, I walk a lot of the time. I don't just hit the button to fast run places, and I never fast travel. Very well, I do in certain cases because the worlds are so big now you can't. But But I like to check every corner of an open world. I like to look behind to walk into every waterfall to make sure there's not a cave behind it.
Oddly enough, that's a very Zelda trait, but yes, go on.
Yeah, right, for sure. And so I like things like that. To me, I want to be able to experience the world, and I want to do it at my own pace, but I also want to do it in the way that the game developers meant me to do it. I hate it when someone plays GTA and they turn it on and they drive to the top of the map right away the first day and go get in an airplane and fly around and see everything. That's not the way that you can do that because they give you the freedom, but games like Red Dead specifically, they're meant for you to start it and to follow the story along. You can explore in the areas that the story takes you to, because the map is so huge that yes, you could get on your horse and ride across the map just to say that you did it, to see what's over there. But the game has cutscenes. The game has specific moments in it that play to going into areas for the first time and unveiling things to you and opening game mechanics as you play through the game to help you take advantage of the different locations. And the same exact thing can be said for all the Assassin's Creed games. The same thing can be said for Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon. I personally like to play these games, experiencing it as the story goes. So with that in mind, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a game that is made to be intentionally slow. It's meant to be intentionally realistic in ways that a lot of people found cumbersome. You have to feed your horse. When your horse gets dirty, you have to clean your horse off. Now, a lot of people cite that as being a super negative to the game. However, I played the game for well over 100 some hours, and you could easily go through the game without ever brushing your horse. You could easily go through the game without feeding. You can feed it's just literally pushing a button while you're riding the horse to give it an apple or something. And the only reason you do that is because your horse has a stamina meter or a health meter.
Yeah.
And as it gets down, you just give it apples or whatever you want, and boop, the bar goes up. It's literally just a mechanic. So it's not like this. People make it seem like it's this really super cumbersome thing, and it doesn't have to be. You can treat your horse like he's your friend, which he absolutely is in the game, and you should have a relationship with your horse.
You should love your horsey.
And there's literally a relationship meter with your horse that fills in over time, and your horse can't do all the things that it can do until you build up its full meter. And then when your horse dies in the game, which does happen, and it's permadeath with your horse, it means something. It means a lot. And it's incredibly sad if you have a horse that you've been using for a long time and it dies and you can't get it back. Can you load the save, and get your horse back that way? Yeah, you can. There were several times where I found a horse in the wild that I really wanted. It was a great blue horse, and it was a thunderstorm. And the weather in this game is like the coolest, most realistic thunderstorms and lightning storms.
That's so cool.
Lightning can strike the ground in this game. There's all sorts of cool, like
That's
modern
wild.
technology. But I was on this plateau, and there were all these horses there, and I was looking. And you can use your binoculars, and you can look at the horses. And if you look at it long, like for like 5 seconds, a little meter fills up, and then it can give you the stats about the horses. And I saw this one horse. I was on this plateau, and I saw this one horse that was different than the other ones, and I had never seen a horse like that in the game. And it was a blue roan is what it was called. And I was like, I'm going to get that horse. I want that horse. And only throughout the whole, this is towards my end of playing the game, through the whole duration of me playing the game for 100 hours, I'd only ever really roped like a couple horses. And then when I was in the snow, I found the best horse in the game accidentally in the snow. It's a white horse in the snow, and I came across it accidentally, the white Arabian, and I managed to get it. And once you get on to get a horse, you see it, you have to rope it, you have to calm it down enough to get to it, you have to get on it, and then you have to do like a little bucking mini game that's really hard.
I'm sure.
You do that, and then at that point the horse is bonded with you. Then if you died at that moment, the horse would be gone. You have to ride the horse to the nearest town, which in Red Dead Redemption could be a 45-minute ride on your horse. 45-minute real-time ride on your horse, depending on where you're at in the game. Usually you can get someplace anywhere within like 20 minutes or so riding your horse. But you can't fast travel with your horse. There's no fast travel in the game at all, actually, as a matter of fact, which is one of the things I love the most about it. It's slow and intentional, that's what I said. But anyway, I was on this plateau, got this horse, lassoed him, got onto him. Okay, so now I've got the horse. I'm sitting on him bareback. My other horse is over there. So I toss a lasso to that horse that I had, and we're walking along together. And the nearest town where I can go to save my horse at a stable is very far away. It's very far away. And so I'm like, okay. So I go down into these hills, and these bandits attack me. And there's lightning coming. And the bandits attack me, and I'm running from the horse, and if someone shoots me, and I fall off the horse, and the horse gets up and walks away, and I'm fighting the bandits, and lightning strikes the horse and kills the horse. And so
Which
I'm like,
horse? The one that you captured, or the one that you had?
The one that I had captured.
God!
The one I really wanted. And so he died, and I was like, no. And before I could hit the button to reload, which would have reloaded me way before that, they killed me. And when they killed me, it auto-saved. Like that.
Oh, no.
And the only save in the game that you can have is the auto-save. So it auto-saved, and I lost the horse.
Oh, God.
And that to me was
sucks.
That to me was like one of the most awesome experiences I had in the game. It was a bad experience. Like I was stressful and all this stuff.
Interesting, though.
But like something that probably only happened to me in that particular way. And that's not even getting into like the story of Red Dead Redemption, which honestly, like, we don't have time to get into it too much. But are you ever going to play these games?
Honestly, probably not. I don't think I have the skill with the particular controller. Go ahead and spoil it. It's fine.
Okay, so I'm going to spoil Red Dead Redemption 1 and Red Dead Redemption 2 right now so you can understand why these games are so special.
Okay.
Red Dead Redemption 1 came out in 2010. You go through, you play the whole game as the character named John Marston. One of the things that's great about it is the whole entire game, he's a cowboy. You're in the Old West. The game starts and you have been taken from your family. You have a home in Beecher's Hope is what your ranch is called. You live there with your wife, your wife Abigail, your son Jack, and you live there with this crazy old guy named Uncle. At the beginning of the game, the government has come to you and said, hey, we know who you and your wife are. You used to be members of this gang, and we're going to throw you and your wife in jail, and your son is going to be an orphan unless you go and kill the living members of your gang. For us, we're going to force you to do this. And so the Pinkerton agents come to your house and they capture you and they put you on a train and they say, you got to go kill these 4 members of your old gang. So you go through the game and you meet all these crazy characters that are all awesome. You meet these bad guys. You have to slowly take them out one by one. You have to travel down into Mexico, which there's a whole giant area in Mexico that's awesome. Deals with the Mexican Revolution, all sorts of cool stuff.
Ooh.
You take them all out. You get to the very end. You take out the last bad guy. You go home. you spend like several missions with your family, with your son. You take him fishing. A bear attacks you. You kill the bear. You go to the trade post to take you to the trading post next to your house, the outpost. The Manzanita post is actually what it's called. You take the bear hide there. You get Jack like a coat, whatever. You have a dog. The dog comes with you. It's great. You go back home. You wake up in the middle of the night. You hear rustling out in the barn. You go out there. The government has come. They shoot and they kill you. You die. The character you just spent 100 hours with, doing all this wonderful stuff for, they shoot you and they kill John Marston and you die.
Do they kill the rest of your family?
Nope, they just kill John Marston because he's the only one that knew what they forced him to do.
Red Dead Redemption 2. Let's go on.
Well, actually, that you haven't heard the epilogue yet of Red Dead Redemption 1.
Okay, all right.
So after they kill John, the character you've been playing as, 10 years go by, and you are now controlling Jack Marston, his son, and you have to go and find the two guys that killed your dad 10 years ago, the Pinkerton agents, and you have to kill them, and that's how that game ends.
Oh my god, that is wild!
Yeah, it's great. Like And now this is 2010, mind you. This is before Game of Thrones. This is before Walking Dead. This is before it was mainstream to kill your main characters and stuff.
Yeah.
The moment in Red Dead Redemption 1 when John Marston gets killed is one of the most incredible things ever. One of the things in the game is it's called Deadeye mode, where you push a button and everything goes in slow motion. You can move the cursor around, so you could move it to like a guy's hand and like you push the X and it puts a little marker there, and then you push the button to go out of Deadeye mode, and you fast shoot his hand, and so the gun would fly out or whatever.
Yeah.
You spend the whole game building this up to the point where you have like 20 seconds, and however many bullets you got in your gun, you could just headshot everybody. You push the button, it goes slow motion, you put an X, wherever you want on their heads, and then you just hit the button and it goes bang, 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 bang.
Oh, wow.
When they kill John, you have your gun with you, and it goes into Deadeye mode right away, and there's just too many people. There's like a line of 20 guys, and no matter how hard you try, you can't put an X on every person. So you can't, there's no way you cannot die. So you die. Okay. That's Red Dead Redemption 1. Red Dead Redemption 2 takes place right like 2 years before Red Dead Redemption 1 starts. And I am not going to spoil Red Dead Redemption 2 because it's a new enough game. I don't want to spoil it for people. I will spoil one part at the end. So this is still spoilers everywhere. Why Red Dead Redemption 2 is so good is because it makes Red Dead Redemption 1 a better game. It makes Red Dead Redemption 1 better. And the way that happens is you go through Red Dead Redemption 2 as your own character, totally different, in the gang that you had to kill in the first game. So now you're in the gang, so you get to know the backstories, and you get to know all these people you had to go through for the government and kill in Red Dead Redemption 1. You get to know all those people. You get to know whether they're good guys or bad guys, doesn't matter. You know how their lives end because you killed them with John in Red Dead 1. In Red Dead 2, you learn about all those people, but you also learn about Jack and his wife, or you also learn about John Marston and his wife Abigail and their son Jack, who's just a little boy at the time. You get to learn all about all them. You get to learn about their troubled relationship. You get to learn about Dutch, the leader of the group, and his slow descent into madness, which may or not have happened because in one of the missions he gets hit in the head and then becomes crazy after that. That's an awesome theory that happens in the game.
That's wild.
Then...
That's so cool.
Okay, screw it. I am going to spoil all of Red Dead Redemption 2. Then, at the end of Red Dead Redemption 2... well, I'll just say something happens at the end of Red Dead Redemption 2.
You can say, I'm not going to play it, okay? Go ahead.
Okay, so at the end of Red Dead Redemption 2, the character you're playing as dies. He sacrifices himself to save John. So then you get the epilogue of Red Dead Redemption 2, which is my favorite part of any video game I've ever played. And you are John Marston again. You are the character you played from the first game again.
First game.
You know how his life ends because you were there. You witnessed it. You saw everything happen. You saw him fight for his family. You saw him do all sorts of crazy things to not... You saw him go through all the sacrifices he made. Now you're him before all that. And you travel with... It starts with you and your wife Abigail and your son Jack in a wagon, and you're going to purchase land called Beecher's Hope in this area. So you go there, you purchase the land, and then you go through this whole mini game where you build your house. And it's the house from the first game. you build your house, uncle comes, you and Abigail get married, because you weren't married before this. You get married, you go through all of that, and the process of doing that makes you appreciate the first game so much more that it's like a wonderment of storytelling. It's like insane.
That's how you do a prequel. Baten Kaitos did that, which I'm so happy about. I love when people pull off prequels.
And the last thing you see in Red Dead Redemption 2 is the Pinkertons standing on the hill looking down at your house before they come to get John. That's the last thing you see. Now then, from there, you can go do whatever you want in the game.
He can play the first game
because it's open world. But like the way that they tell the story in that game, and the way every single character, like I'm sitting here and I can tell you, like Javier, all the characters in the game mean something. Bonnie McFarlane in the first game is so awesome, but Sadie in Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the greatest characters in the game. Everyone really wants the next game to be about Sadie and her.
That's so cool.
Her everything, like even like seeing little Jack, who is the character that you end up playing as at the end of Red Dead Redemption 1, seeing him as a little boy as your Arthur and taking him fishing to like teach him how to fish because John is never there for him at the point in this game. Like it's just, there's so many layers to the story that are like classic storytelling done in a way that only a video game could do, is just so good. Like it's so
wild.
It hurts me
incredible.
It hurts me how good the game is. It really is just so incredible. And the reason I like it more than The Witcher is because since I played both of these games, and even though I played The Witcher like the year before I played Red Dead, I still think about Red Dead Redemption now. Like I'll just sit and I'll think about like walking into a town and, you know, seeing something happen over there and having my horse, you know, having a snake scare my horse and fall off, or seeing a thunderstorm. Or there's this one area in the game where I came across this tree that has all these bottles hanging from it. So you can see the sun through the bottles. And then I came across it in a thunderstorm for the first time when I was taking a lady whose cart had broken and her horse had died. And I was taking her to the next town, but I stopped to see these bottles, and she got mad at me and left. And then like 40 hours later in the game, I met her again at the town I was supposed to take her to, and she yelled at me for not taking her there. And that's the same town where every night at 2:00 at night in the game, this girl comes to the window of this house. And if you want to, you can go to the bar in that town to find a scrap of paper that says that there was a scuffle between the guy who owns the town and his daughter and her suitor, who was killed and buried in a grave in the backyard. And if you want to, you can then 40 hours later in the game find a overturned mail cart, and you go through the letters in that mail cart and find a letter to that girl from the guy explaining that he was going to be at this place at this time. And that's just, none of that's in a mission. Like not a single thing that I just mentioned is in a mission in the game. That's just in the game.
That's really interesting.
There's so much stuff. And I mean, I could talk about it forever. I'm not going to, I'm done now. But it's a special game that is not for everybody, because a lot of people just want to click on things and shoot things real fast. And that is not what this game is. This game is about going slow. This game is about walking through town to get to where you're going, and not just pushing the button that automatically makes you sprint. It's not that kind of a game. Like I said, there's no fast travel system. You have to hunt for stuff. Like I spent several days in the game trying to get you have to get animals of all these different, there's like hundreds and hundreds of different species of animal in the game. And you have to get certain animals to take them to your chef in your camp. That's the guy that like makes you stuff to upgrade your satchel so you can take more stuff in your satchel. And I spent like days and days trying to upgrade my satchel, and I found myself in the real world looking up at the sky and looking at birds differently, because I spent so long in the game just looking at the sky trying to find birds, like specific birds.
That sounds like an incredible way in which video games really do affect the way that we look at the world today. And I think that's a really incredible note for us to end on, frankly. It really does swap. It wires your brain to appreciate not only what you're noticing and what's around you, but what's possible within a virtual reality setting, you know?
100%.
I think that's really cool.
Yep. So one last thing we're going to do before we go is I'm going to show you all my t-shirts and then we can be done. Because I didn't do that yet.
You did change. I noticed that.
Yeah. Okay, so I
Well
got
done.
Metal Gear t-shirt number 1 here. I think I showed you this when we were doing the anime one. This is
Whoa.
my Raiden t-shirt. Sorry, I can't see the
That's okay. I can see Raiden.
if the
He looks
designs are
great.
clear or not. Hold on, I got to stand up.
Raiden became such a badass, apparently. Apparently he wasn't before, and now he is, which is
cut
wild
this
to
part
me.
Okay.
What is this?
Shadow of the Colossus, an 8-bit format. I don't know if you can.
Whoa! That's so cool.
I don't know if it's showing up that well. It's
Yeah,
kind
no,
of
I could see it. That's pretty awesome.
Yep,
I love
Shadow of the
it.
Colossus. Here we got Metal Gear. This is from Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots.
That one, a little lower. I remember seeing that everywhere, literally everywhere.
And this is cool because from a graphic design standpoint, because all of the characters in the game are what these all these particles. Those are all the different characters in the game.
That's so cool.
And guns and all sorts of different things that are in the game. This is the oldest shirt that I have. This I got when I was in high school. It's not an official Twisted Metal shirt or anything, but that's obviously the Twisted Metal. That obviously
is so much the Twisted Metal.
the logo. So I thought
Even I could have picked that one out.
This is my favorite design. This is a Mario t-shirt.
Hey, that's pretty fun.
Right? Yoshi
That
and
is really wild.
Mario
yeah.
and Princess Peach. Mm-hmm. Totally great. The collar's too wide on that one, though. I can never wear it.
I like the design on it, though. You have a lot of t-shirts, my dude.
Oh my god, this is only like an 18th of all the shirts I have. Well, that's the beauty of being
Fun.
the exact same size for the last 20 years. I could just keep all my shirts. Metal Gear, they got the classic orange box on there. It's the theory of evolution with Metal Gear.
Yeah.
With
He's
Snake.
so much fun.
This is a Metal Gear one that's a play on Metal Gear. It's a T-Rex Metal Gear. That's not an actual Metal Gear or Metal Gear. Like, there is no dinosaur looking. Well,
This is the thing. You could have told me that was an actual Metal Gear, and
Right,
then I would have probably just believed you.
Yeah, well, I mean, all of the different Metal Gears, because every game has a Metal Gear in it. It's a giant robotic controlled thing that they have to destroy. They all do have they all look amphibious and stuff, and they look kind of like dinosaurs, but there isn't one that's like a specific Tyrannosaurus Rex like this. And then the last one I got is one of my favorite Harry Potter shirts. This is Harry Potter and Limbo put together.
Harry Potter and Limbo?
Limbo
Is that a game
Yes, Limbo is a black and white game. You're this little character down here.
That's really cool.
It's all black and white, and it's side scrolling, and it's terrifying and awesome. It's made by it doesn't matter, but it's an indie game. You should play it. Like, you can probably get it for $1.
That sounds pretty interesting.
It's just
I think that
side-scrolling.
I was just going through a review on it's a game called Darkwood that's like very Slavic horror, but like I
Oh,
chose
cool.
not to include that one because that was wild.
That sounds awesome. I'll have
It
just
is.
Slavic horror sounds great. Mm-hmm. So that's all I got. Those are all the t-shirts. Probably like 10 of them isn't enough or whatever.
I don't have any all my t-shirts are just basic crap. But yes, that is a wonderful display of t-shirts, honestly. Mm-hmm. My husband got me coffee. Did you get me coffee? Yeah. Yay, thank you.
In time for us to be done.
I'm gonna drink this and enjoy it and think about all the wonderful games that you've said.
Yeah, that you'll never
I never
play.
in my life have I ever wanted to play Twisted Metal, but here we go.
Well,
This is the world we live in.
You should just look up. It's so funny that's the one you bring up because
But I love all the stuff that you've said here. It's been really incredible talking to you about video games.
yeah, and we didn't even get to talk about a lot of the stuff that I feel like we could have had more like I was trying to keep everything very surface level. But like I could talk like deeply about like the meanings of things and stuff in like every individual game rather than
I mean, I
all
barely
10 Assassin's
scratched the
Creed games.
surface.
I'm sure.
On all of the Final Fantasy games, there's so much stuff. I just did not want to get into it. But
And the
I think
story of that first game seems so cool. Like, dang.
wild. That story is so great.
Yeah.
But pretty much all of the Final Fantasies go to those sort of crazy extents.
Yeah.
Oh, but I have had a wonderful time talking about all this, and I think that it's been really great learning about all these games that are sort of outside of my sphere that I never even thought to think about, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree 100% because I've only ever had one friend before that was into like JRPGs and stuff, and we never really talked about it because he also likes stuff like The Last of Us and Uncharted and Ghost of Tsushima. So usually when we talk about games, we talk about the games we played that we both played, rather than trying to explain to each other
on these crazy JRPGs.
or just not even sell, but just like explain like why it's so cool. So it was fun to talk to you about that because I've never talked to anybody that's played those games before about why they enjoyed them. So.
Well, I mean, thank you for taking the time to talk to me about this. It's been really amazing.
Yeah, hopefully someone watches it someday. If you're still here and you've watched this whole thing, holy crap.
Good for you.
We will not drag it on anymore. The only thing you're going to see from now on is just the little cool blooper my nephew and I recorded of that sweet thing he added in Minecraft. So thank you very much for watching. And
thank you.
Check out alohomorapodcast.com if you don't know what the heck we're here for.
And if you want to see more stuff like this, then go ahead and head to our Patreon. And for as low as like 100 cents, so $1 a month, 100 pennies, you could fund more insane content like this.
All right, thanks everybody. Let's go. Okay, I'm here with my nephew. He's going to show us something funny he did in the world while I was making the intro for this video. Ready, Hunter? Take off. Let's go. Ooh, looky. I should have nothing in my hand. I don't know how to do that.
Circle drops it.
Whoop. I don't want to... Oh, no, down drops it for me. Look at this. It's like a chandelier of horses. This is amazing. Hunter, you did a good job. You can even come up here and look down. I love it, Hunter. Thank you for contributing to our Alohomora world. Hey, can you wave at me goodbye? I'm behind you. No, now I'm behind you. Yeah.
Hold on.
You're looking up in the air. What are you... Wait, you're throwing... You're throwing stuff. Woohoo, we're juggling. I can do that too. Oh, no, I can't. I don't know how to do that. Hey, wave. You're not waving. Wave at me, though, at least. Can you do that? Why do you gotta walk over there? What are you... What? Come on. Come on. Wave. Wave.